All right, so we'll call the order of the public safety meeting. A roll call. Just want me to read off who's here.
If you wish.
So we have myself, Jim Moeller, Jeannie, Julie, Dan, Shauna on phone, Chris, Nathan, and David. The third thing on the agenda here is police discussion. I have a couple of notes here that I'd like to start. So the purpose of this meeting is to discuss the state policies, procedures of the Hortonville Police Department, Public Safety Committee, and the Village Board. So the idea is that we can have an open discussion of what our options moving forward are, as well as what changes we can make moving forward to improve the communication and expectations of the Hortonville Police Department, Safety Committee, and the Village Board. Hopefully at the conclusion of this meeting, we'll be more educated as to what our needs and options moving forward are. Everyone here is doing their jobs and fulfilling their responsibility. There's no enemies or sides, right, in this discussion, right? As board and committee members, if we ask difficult questions, it's not because we're not trying to be mean. It's part of our job. That's what we're supposed to do. All right, this is the first formal interaction between the safety committee and the Hortonville PD, but hopefully we will increase that the frequency here a little bit more in the future. The budget for 2020 is scheduled to be completed in just over a couple of months. We're currently here because of a suggested freeze on hiring and for the current position that was opened up. So one of the things that I did want to point out here is the discussion. I think we should avoid in the discussion bringing up how other departments are treated or how things were done here in the past. Myself and Shauna weren't here in the past, so we have no reference from any of that. So in my opinion, it doesn't matter how things were done in the past. All that matters is how things are supposed to be done in the future, how they're supposed to be done now and supposed to be done in the future.
Including
me. I'm sorry, and Dan, sorry. So, does anybody like to start?
It's your table.
Chris, would you like to start?
Sure.
Okay.
So basically, I gave you the information. I gave you the packet at the last board meeting. So all the information is in there. It talks about the pros and cons. It's got the comparable departments with the sizes. It's got full-time versus part-time.
Chris, I don't want to interrupt you. Dan doesn't have a copy.
I don't
Do you
have
have a
my
paper
copy with
copy?
me either right now.
Let's see if I get a couple extra.
This would have been the handout she made for last meeting.
For the last meeting.
Starting with the board asked when I was hired, a lot of your routine officers.
And then there was the one you sent to the board last
All I
night.
have is one.
Okay.
You go around and make some copies, or?
I'm fairly familiar with what it says. I've got a pretty good head for numbers as to where it was.
Well, I
I'm
think
fine with hard copy if you don't have them.
A little scramble here, Shauna. Hang tight.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but he was looking for what we were talking about.
Are you still there? Shauna?
I'm here.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you once and again to make sure you're awake.
I have the document you guys are looking for. Mark.
Oh, okay.
I'm good too.
So it's the handout, the staple handout, probably about 10 pages?
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, you want to Skype next time so we know she's awake, or?
Sure. And,
Okay,
was there any questions with anything that was in that packet? I know that some additional questions came out after the meeting was announced.
so how did you come up with the comparables?
As far as what?
Just what was your method to pick Seymour, Amro, Winnicott, Brilliant, and Kiel to compare us to Hortonville?
They are approximately the
Similar
same
population, that's what it was.
Yep, I think that the population is posted there.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm just wondering if they were, if those are villages as well as Hortonville, if they have other similarities, or if it's just the population.
Population.
Okay.
Seymour is in Outagamie County.
Okay.
Seymour is very similar to our population. Seymour is, our department structure is almost the same as Seymour. So Seymour and Hortonville like to bounce things off of each other because we
So you
couldn't-
did regional as well as,
Right.
as well as the overall structure plus the
Yep.
population. Okay, because I called around a little bit. I wasn't calling around trying to question, and you may have gotten a phone call because I talked to about 10 different police chiefs around the state. And I wasn't calling to question your numbers. That's why I was asking what criteria you used to come up with this.
Sure.
Right? My intent for calling around, and I expressed this to pretty much everybody that I talked to, was I would like to get a feel for how other municipalities deal with the same issues that we have, right? Staffing, part-time versus full-time, what do they think of it? You know, what kind of turnover do they have in part-time? What kind of turnover do they have in full-time? I had some I had some differing results from the returns that I got. I saw, I mean, what I did was I went to the state of Wisconsin population website and I looked for Hortonville because it's in order by population, and I went the ones right above it and the ones right below it. So I went Oostburg, Wrightstown, Juneau, Modavi, Johnson Creek, Sherwood, Spooner, Somerset, Bristol, Nakusa, Osceola, Williams Bay, and then I call Black Creek because they're right around here too. And they're all right above and right below us for population. Their staffing was slightly different. So what I ran into was like Oostburg has one full-time, no part-time, just a resource officer. Not sure that would fly here in Hortonville, but Wrightstown has a little bit more population than us, has 4 full-time officers, no part-time, and the chief patrols. His exact quote was, "I do everything." He said he from his discussion, he really didn't like part-time at all. Right? He would prefer, and that's why he has 4 full-time. He said part-time, just a revolving door. If he could get full-time all the time, that's what he would do. From the discussions that I had in them, you know, to give you a general sense, about 35 to 40% of the chiefs out there that I talked to were working chiefs. They patrolled. They had the one chief I talked to patrolled 50% of his schedule. He said when he has to do payroll or he has to do some budgeting or something like that, that goes down. But otherwise, he patrols. There were a lot of balanced 4 full-time, 5 part-time. Like Modavi is 4 and 5. Johnson Creek is 2 full-time, 8 part-time. They were very critical of the part-time, but they can't hold the full-time because they have a different situation than we do. Whereas their population fluctuates in the year dramatically, so they maintain the full-time. Not all of them maintained a 24-hour coverage. So I'm curious as to let's see, what was another one? I had a couple that had some really good suggestions or things that they were doing. I did speak to one who does successfully require the part-timers to pay back for their equipment if they leave within a certain period of time. They have a payback schedule, like, so it's he said, I think after the first year it is 50%. If they're there for 1 year, if they're there for 2 years, then it starts to drop down rapidly. And so so the city or the village itself isn't on the hook for all of the expenses for a part-time hire. He said they're very successful at it. I talked to somebody else and he said, well, we tried to do that, but our village attorney said there's no way we can do it. So I don't know which way that should actually go, if it's even an option. The chief in Black Creek, he was a really friendly guy. He said he's a friend of yours. He said, and he mentioned something about their training officer. I'm not sure if you're aware of how they do theirs. What he did was, and I thought it was a really neat idea, is they went to the Tech, not Fox Valley, Northwest Technical College, and they went to the instructors there and asked the instructors who would like to have their certifications maintained. I think it's certification, so you can continue to be a patrol officer. And they said you could work part-time, just be the training officer, and that's it. You don't have to do any patrols. So they hired in a part-time training officer. They saved money by utilizing that officer's training at the tech, because the tech sends him to school and continues his training, and he doesn't have to go back in and requalify for training. I thought it was a great idea. It was a great cost savings. They're saving the department money,
We do
and it's a
that.
part-time. You do that.
We do that. We
Okay.
have 3 part-timers that do not patrol. We have Matt Ninham from NWTC.
Okay.
We have Dan Foyt from Fox Valley Tech. So
Okay.
Dan Foyt does, having an evidence room and the size of the evidence room and collecting the evidence is very, there's a lot of legalities that go with it. Things
Mhm.
have to be disposed, things have to. So Dan oversees that. He also works part-time for Grand Chute PD, plus he's an instructor there.
Okay.
So we have that. We have Matt Ninham, who has, I believe, almost 56 certifications. So he can train in anything that we need. He can
Okay.
train in firearms, EVOC, you name it. And then we have a third one who does our vehicle maintenance, and he doesn't charge us to do our vehicle maintenance. So if for instance, one of the cars the battery started boiling a couple weeks ago, and we ended up taking the car in. What happened is the siren box and the light box ended up frying because of a bad battery. Bill was here that day, and he knew because of all the equipment. He pulled that equipment. It was under warranty. He checked, found out it was under warranty. He mailed it in for us. We received one within 2 days. He came back and he replaced it. So those 3 are huge cost saving, but we're doing the same thing Black Creek's doing.
I was under the impression that the officer that just resigned was our training officer.
He's an FTO.
He's an FTO.
Yes. So what happens is when a new hire comes into our department, okay? They have a 2-year degree
Mhm.
in criminal justice or something else. But then they have to go and they have to put in 720 hours in an academy, okay? So
Okay.
this is where they learn, and that's what Ninham teaches, okay?
Okay.
So with that 720 hours, they go right from the beginning, how to write reports, and then at the end, they have to test out. And at the end, it's a pass or fail, okay? If they fail it, I don't know that they can take it again. But then they come to us, because then we hire them,
Okay.
and then they go through, each department's different. Seymour goes through a 10-week FTO program. Now that person is with an officer, and that officer teaches them policy and procedures of Hortonville, the paperwork of Hortonville, the streets of Hortonville, so that when they go out on their own, they know how to be a cop in Hortonville.
Okay.
And we only do 4 weeks. Seymour does 10 weeks. So we kind of like fast track ours, but if we find out that we think that somebody might need more, I know that Kazuski had left. He had 2 weeks with Nick, and Nick's in the room here. Had 2 weeks with Nick. Nick needed an additional 2 weeks, so we put him with Tyler. Tyler's here too. Tyler's got 9 years on the force, so Tyler basically had to go through all of the paperwork. So what we have is we have an FTO binder that's created. It's this thick, okay?
Let me kind of stop you for a sec.
Yep.
I'm gonna, just so I know what FTO stands for, I'm assuming it's Field Training Officer.
Field Training
Okay, I just want to
Officer.
make, before we
Yep,
get any
perfect.
further,
Yeah,
I'm going.
and I
This-
appreciate
The
you-
whole time I'm assuming it,
I
but yeah.
appreciate you asking. So within that binder, it's got what happens if you have to respond to a burglary.
Okay.
You have to take these steps, these steps, these steps in order for it to be either a criminal charge or maybe a municipal charge, you know. So he goes through each one of those and he checks it off. And that's a very, very important step. Because if something happens and one of our officers is sued, they're going to look at what type of FTO training that they had and did they complete this whole book. So that takes time because you're sitting in the office with them, you're reviewing that. A lot of times you're sitting in the squad car and the FTO's got his book open in his lap, you know, and because in most cases, in Shiocton, we would go through that book, we would never get an OWI in our whole training. We would never get a burglary in our whole training. We would never get a emergency committal, which is a 72-hour hold for somebody who wants to kill themselves. But that FTO is talking them through all of the steps, and then they can keep that book so that when it comes time to, oh my God, I got an emergency committal, where do I go from here? They can open it up because it's all, flip the page open, and then they can start going through the checklist of what has to be done. So that's the additional part that it has to. But then when it comes to time, because each officer has to have 24 hours of state training. Department of Justice requires that each officer has to have 24 hours. That's where Matt and Bill and Dan Foyt come in, because we don't have to ship them off to Fox Valley Tech and pay $150 to do evac. We do it for $10 an officer. Matt doesn't charge us for training. Same thing with firearms. We got firearms instructors. State requires that every year the officer has to qualify with their weapon that they carry. So if we have a new officer that comes in, for instance, when I had Nick and Manders, Austin, I call up Bill or I call up Matt Ninham. I'm like, I got one that just was just hired. We're gonna put him out on the road on Wednesday. He's like, okay, I'll get him done before Wednesday. So he takes them up to the range, make sure that they can qualify, that they can shoot their gun, that they know what to do. So, but then the rest of the training, we have Tyler, he's a paramedic. So we can do tourniquet training. We can do all of our training in-house, which is nice, because a lot of municipalities have to do it outside of. They have to send their guys to these seminars and stuff like that. Very seldom do we have to do that. So we are very lucky to have the staff that we have. And it's kind of cool because when people come in and do background checks and they say, what do you guys got for staff here? And we tell them we have Matt Ninham, Dan Foyt. They're like, really? How great is that? So it's an advantage to having them, and it's a cost saving. It's huge.
Yeah.
Because if we have to take them someplace else and $225 for a class, $150 for evac, that starts adding up.
Okay. So one of the things that I did, one of the other questions that I asked all the chiefs that I talked to was, how often do you meet with either, depending on if they had a public safety or if they had a police commissioner? I said, how often do you meet? And pretty much every one of them was about 3 to 4 weeks. And the comments that I got back from the chiefs were, if they don't ask us to come in for a meeting, we're asking them, because if you don't have the lines of communication, you don't know what you just told me.
Right.
You have no idea.
Right.
And to be honest, the most questions that I get going around the village are about the police department. Just the way that is. I shoot pool, I go to the bars, I go out to eat, and everybody says, well, what's a police department? What's this? And everybody has their own opinion, and there's a lot of them, but that is the thing that comes up the most.
And it always has been.
And
Everybody
so-
loves a firefighter,
so
but
part of the not meeting is completely on me, because I wasn't aware that we needed that level of communication.
Right, and I was a chief over at Shiocton for 5 years, and we never met. The only time that we met was when we needed to meet.
Okay. So I don't want to monopolize everything here, but I do have a question about the report that you sent out, the crime prevention. What is that?
Crime preventions are screens that are started for, Hauser starts probably the most of them, because every time he goes to the school, he starts a crime prevention screen. He's got to start a screen to let the dispatch center know that he's out on something. And they don't have one that's listed as SRO. So a crime prevention actually could be, say for instance, if you went into a park to check a park, that would be a
Okay.
crime prevention screen. So ultimately, 3 crime prevention screens could be created every night.
Okay, so it's not actually like a call that comes. I was just looking at the call for service here, so because it's a pretty big number every month. So I was curious as to what that was. So it's not like somebody calls in and there's a report of something. This is just your internal record keeping of a patrol or a drive-through or something of that nature.
It's the officer documenting that they did it.
Yes, yeah. That's
So
right.
if I wanna go back and I wanna see what the officer did, so every morning I receive a report of what the officers have done throughout the day.
Okay.
And then I forward that report to all the officers so that they know what's going on, so that they don't physically have to go into the CAD system
Mhm.
and look and see what was done. I mean, they can, because then that's their way of reading reports, but we find that it's much easier for the part-timers because they're sent the same email, that they can keep up to speed, because if they're only working 1 or 2 shifts per week or month, then they at least know what's going on in the village.
Okay.
So crime prevention also could be like if they're doing business checks. So if they're in the industrial park and they can start a crime prevention, and then they can go around and start patrolling all the buildings and making sure, because we get a lot of open doors in the industrial park.
Okay.
So some of them will start an open door screen, and some of them will just take care of the call.
Okay.
So then these calls on here, if you're saying crime prevention is like a business check, is like a, open door, so some of these are like duplicates on this list.
Some of them are, it depends upon how the officer screens it up. So say for instance, if he's doing a crime prevention of the entire industrial park, and he finds an open door, he can start a screen for an open door.
But technically, they're still doing crime prevention on the rest of that industrial park too. So
Exactly.
They're doing,
Exactly.
yeah, not just one business.
Some officers might start one crime prevention screen and go check all 3 parks, and then just document that all 3 parks were checked.
So if you look at the numbers, and I'm not reducing what the impact of, or the importance of your position here, but if you look at all the numbers and you were to take out the traffic, and the parking, and the crime prevention, you're down to about 5 calls a day. Does that sound about right? It averages out. I'm sure some days are way more than others, but that's according to my numbers, that's what it comes out to.
It could be.
Okay.
And your assist,
Assist
Assist?
could be anything.
Yeah, so that, I'm assuming that's not documented. That's just like, if you have a call, that doesn't
Right.
say how many officers show up to the call, or if you have to have an assist, or any, it's just, this is just the number for the call,
Let me
right?
write that down, Jim. What were you eliminating out of that?
So if you take out the traffic stop, right, the traffic safety, and the parking, right, then you're down to about 6 1/4 calls a day. And if you take out the crime prevention, then you're down to about 5 calls a day.
So,
Just a fuzz over, and that's all the way throughout the entire year.
okay,
That's what you average
but
out to.
can you give me a reason why you're pulling those specific items out? I mean, I just so that I can understand where you're going with this.
Well, what I tried to look at was the reason that we're here right now is because of staffing, right? So if staffing is the issue, right? So we currently have an officer that resigned, a full-time position, and the discussion is whether or not we should immediately fill that position, or we should wait to see how the budget flushes out, which is about 2 months away, to see what to do about staffing for that position, or staffing for the entire department. Not saying you would end up not filling that position, because it may work out that your budget is exactly everything and you can fill that position and there's no problem. Or it may work out that if you fill that position now, and this is the reason for this, is if you fill the position now and then 2 months from now you get a different budget, then all of a sudden you're super tight and you don't have any wiggle room anywhere, right? That was the reason to say, okay, let's pump the brakes just a little bit and let's see where we're going with this. So I started looking, the reason I started looking at those specific types of service that the police department is providing is those types of services are the ones that would tend to be more flexible, right,
Are
for
those-
staffing.
But are those the ones that generate revenue ordinance violations?
They do.
They do.
That's why, I
and-
guess that's
and
maybe I
we
thought
can-
where you were going with that.
No, where I was going to with that was the whole idea of the 2 months, and the reason that we had to call this public safety meeting in the first place was because of the desire to fill the position immediately versus the option of waiting, right? So if you're looking at staffing, and I understand staffing is very complicated, and you have hours, and you have who can do what, and who's full-time, and who's part-time, but I just started looking at it from a reference point of how busy is the police force itself, right? And if you could say, okay, well, traffic stops, speeding tickets, crime prevention, and parking are the lion's share of the non-critical services that are provided, right? And if you remove them out, the police department is providing about 5.1 calls per day they're answering to.
But not necessarily. A parking, it can be a call.
Okay,
If we get a call from a resident, I'm gonna use your neighborhood, okay, that we have somebody parking on the street
yes.
with a trailer, that could be a parking screen.
I assume that fell under ordinance, unless you're doubling up.
It could be either or.
Okay,
You can, a lot of calls, you can go either way on them. You can do a crime
Yes.
prevention or an open door. You
Yes.
could do a parking or an ordinance.
Mhm. Okay.
So if you have a parking complaint, okay,
Mhm.
or if you know that you're writing an ordinance, you might start an ordinance screen right away.
yeah,
But the parking is usually the overnight parking with snow, or it's parking RVs on the road.
okay.
And I mean no disrespect when I
No.
say this, but when you use the term non-critical, I live in a very, very different road than the three of you. So to me, traffic safety and traffic stops are a critical issue.
I still think they're important.
They're very, well, because you've also got several, I mean, I mean no disrespect, Jim, but when you say non-critical, that tells me that it's non-critical in your neighborhood, but if somebody was driving 40 miles an hour by your house, it'd be critical.
Oh, yeah.
If somebody's driving 40 miles an hour by my house, it's critical. That's public safety. So I just hesitate to use the word non-critical.
The point of me of bringing this up at all, right, was not to be critical of what you do at all. It is to bring it to light so that way you can help me understand why they're
And great.
one of the reasons why the scheduling can't be flexible enough to handle the loss of that officer for 2 months. That's what I'm trying to understand. So I'm trying to, with as much insight, because with the information that we have, we don't have enough. I mean, I don't patrol. I don't know what your job is all day, and I'm never gonna know, right? But our job is to ask enough questions so that way we can understand why you feel there's no way to move forward without waiting for the 2 months for the next budget to come out before somebody is moved from part-time to full-time.
And that was all laid out in that email that I sent yesterday. Did you get the email last
I
night?
did.
Okay.
And I
So-
got buried in the information.
And let me clarify, traffic stops.
Okay,
Our traffic stops, we don't write for somebody who's doing 10 over or less, okay? Last night I received I looked at them this morning because I'm behind. I got plenty of reports to do. I had payroll to do and everything else. I got phone calls that need to be returned. I can't return my phone calls yet. I'm busy, okay? Because I've been working the road this entire week. So far I have 15 hours. I got another 8 hours tomorrow. I am working, but I'm taking work home and I'm working at home because I can't get my job done because I'm busy out there answering calls. I have 9 reports to write. Let's go back to the traffic. So
Okay.
I approved the citations so Julie can do her job, okay? The citations that they're writing are 66 miles per hour in a 45 mile an hour zone. That's what they're writing. They're writing tickets that are 21 and over because we have a huge speeding problem in this village. We do. We caught somebody that was coming past the municipal building at 55 miles an hour in a 25 mile an hour zone. So we are not just picking on random people who are doing 10 miles over the speed limit. We don't even look at them.
Yeah.
We're looking at people who are doing 21 and over in any kind of area. And most of our traffic is on Nash and Main Street. And the amount of drivers that we're getting that are suspended, revoked, reckless drivers, I mean, we get numerous reckless driving complaints throughout the month because people are over the center line, forcing people into ditches and everything else. I mean, that's what we are, public safety.
Do you have an officer on duty when you're on duty?
No, today I had somebody with me from 10 o'clock until 2 o'clock. Or, no, I'm sorry, 10 o'clock to 6 o'clock. But I took calls from 6 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock. And I ran.
So no one's on first shift?
Not right now.
Okay.
Tomorrow, I don't have anybody that comes on until 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
I just, when I was reading what you put out last night on your halftime SRO, I noticed that, he has 19 hours, like, 1 week, and then there was 15 hours the next, which leaves him out of an 80-hour 2-week period,
He's actually,
54 hours.
he's got 40, well, he's supposed to have 40 hours in an 80-hour week, in a 2-hour week, or in a 2-week period. So it's 80 hours, because some of that time he's spending in the parking lot. I don't know if you're just.
Yeah, you have that down.
Yep. So he works 31 week and 50 the next week. 31 week, 50 the next week. And that equals his 80 hours in a pay period. So he may work 15 hours 1 week as an SRO and 35 hours on the road, or not 35, 25. I can't do math anymore. I'm so tired. I've been up since 4 o'clock this morning. But, and then the other week he does just the opposite.
Yeah, 'cause I show, that he would work 34 hours at the schools, and that leaves him 54 hours to patrol.
He does 40. The school
But that's
contract,
not what
the
you gave
school
us.
contracted.
Last night when you sent that out?
I don't have it in front of me,
Okay.
so.
Then there was another question that I just want to clarify for everyone, is I have the SRO contract. And I thought this is what we all understood, that this SRO halftime was Greenville. Now you've got him in Hortonville schools also,
Mhm.
but that's not what this says.
That's what they agreed to.
What, I don't have a copy of that, Jeannie.
He's a halftime SRO
Right here.
for the
Is that the
elementary, middle
most current
schools.
one? Because originally it was
This is the most
just
current
Greenville.
one, now
Yep.
2019 to 2020. Okay, it says, full-time liaison officer at high school, Sergeant Barr. It says, halftime liaison officer at Greenville, Officer Hauser. But then when I read this, I had no idea. So now, Officer Hauser
Brian's
is
here.
Brian's here, so
So
he
the
starts.
RFP for the 1920, 2021 school years came out as a .5 SRO for all the elementaries and middles. That's what the RFP came out as. So what we're doing with Officer Hauser is has sort of split responsibilities between the 5 schools. I am the primary, but in the event that he's on a Greenville side and he maybe has time to go float over to the Hortonville side and just check in and see if everything's good, he does it. So he sort of floats now more than he did last year. So it was a part of the RFP process and the contract for the .5 this year.
So what Jeannie has here, is there a copy of that? I guess I'm wondering if maybe she just doesn't have the most current
This is the
RFP?
most current.
I'm not sure what she has there. so-
I think Chris gave me this. I think you emailed, or Dave did, because I have the 2021,
Wish
it
we all
says the
had
same
it.
thing, Greenville.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, every
Yeah.
board member should have this.
I don't.
We should all have the union contract. That's why, we don't have enough information about our police department. We don't understand a lot of this because we were under the understanding he was 20 hours a week over in Greenville. And then when you sent this out last night, and I went, this is Greenville and Hortonville.
What's the
And
difference
it's-
if he's in Hortonville or Greenville?
Well, there
Just
wasn't.
out of curiosity. I mean,
but we were told that they were in Greenville. That's what the contract says.
but at the school board meeting, it was definite that it was Hortonville and Greenville,
Yeah,
correct?
and it was a district
But the board
decision.
didn't know that, that's all I'm saying. The public safety didn't know it, the board doesn't know it. We're lacking communication.
I believe that I announced that when we received the SRO contract, that he would be
So.
patrolling all 5 schools.
You know,
Yeah.
then we need to update this contract. I mean, to read how it should.
Actually,
It
if
should
you
just
guys
say
could email
Hortonville Area
all of
School
us,
District.
please.
That's all it should say.
Not just.
And it would clarify
gotta-
everything.
I'm sorry, I'm hearing 2 of you.
No, it's on my list. I'm
Yeah.
making,
Yes,
I'm
I
making a
would
to-do
just say,
list.
yeah, it just needs to say Hortonville Area School District. That way, it's clear to the school, it's clear to us, you know, it's clear to everyone. I mean, that way, you know, there's no question on anything. So I guess we just needed clarification, you know.
I was under the
That's all.
impression that, and because maybe because I work in the schools, but I do remember something in a board meeting that we were awarded the contract.
I did announce
And I
it.
remember it being Hortonville and Greenville. I do remember her saying something, and now what meeting that was, I don't remember. I've never seen that
It must have been
contract
somewhere right around the June,
somewhere
end
in
of the
there, because I
June
remember
meeting.
the school board meeting. I remember that, because I remember seeing it on the agenda for the school board. But,
I mean, it's not a big deal, no, but I mean, I'm just saying, just to clean it up.
Yep.
Now, the school, is that an actual contract, or are they,
It's a-
or
it's a
they're,
yep.
or does, are they basically paying time and materials that they're charged?
Yes, it's a contract, and I believe that we received, $88,470
Okay.
from that school contract.
I believe
Yeah, it
it's
looks
a
like
fixed
it's-
contract for a certain
Yeah.
number of hours,
Yeah.
right, for each
Correct.
of
Correct.
the, each of
So
the
is
schools, and
there anything on top of that? Is that actual time that the officer's charging there?
Yes.
Okay, is
So
there
with-
any overhead charged
Yeah.
on top of that for?
yeah, with the
work or anything
modification,
else?
is it changing?
With
From the
what
contract?
modification?
So you have the officer that's going Greenville and Hortonville, is that different than what was agreed upon with the SRO contract?
It's a, I'm sorry, it's a
You go ahead.
hourly contract.
Yeah.
You know, days and hours, and that's all factored in, wages, benefits, mileage.
Mileage.
Everything is factored into that, so anything that would be above and beyond overtime or those types of things, you know, that's charged to the district if they're doing SRO duties. I'm not sure if I'm answering the question.
Is there overhead charge on top of it for basically Julie must be doing a billing to them, right?
No,
Libby does.
Libby does.
Libby does?
Yes, so we do a quarterly billing, and they cover all of the expenses for the 20 hours per week for Officer Hauser and 40 hours per week for myself.
But
Yeah.
nothing for Libby's time, right?
I don't think there's an administrative fee on that. I
There's
don't
not.
know if it's in the
No,
contract.
there's not.
So so you're full-time here, and then the other officer is part-time in Greenville, right, for the 20 hours?
Correct.
And that's the contract. So where does the time that the other officer is coming to Hortonville come from, as SRO?
It's the same one.
Yeah, but
It's
if it's
part of
20
the
hours,
20 hours.
40 hours for one, 20 hours for another, and then now instead of doing 40 and 20, now you're doing 40, 20 and more? Or you're doing 40 and then splitting the
20 is split
20 is
between the
split.
5 schools.
Okay. All right,
Yeah.
I was trying to get to where that was.
yeah, the 20 is split between actually 5 separate buildings.
Yeah.
So they're in the building for short durations of
Yeah.
time, but
That's what she sent out.
Yeah,
last night.
that's their logistics to handle. That's not I mean, we agreed to the contract, or the previous board agreed to that contract, and that's the way it's, I just wanted to make sure we weren't, you know, if you're doing 40 and 20 and then another 16 here, well, then somebody's
No.
getting shorted
No.
somewhere, and
Yeah.
it's coming out of the budget.
And it's hard to.
That's what we're here to
Because there's
talk
also
about.
some flexibility to that SRO, like let's say Officer Hauser happens to be at Hortonville Middle School, but a principal at a Greenville school calls and needs help or needs something with an SRO to be there. I believe there's some flexibility there. I mean,
Yeah, and
I've been
sometimes
in those
It could
situations.
be me too. You know,
Yeah.
if Officer Hauser's busy here,
You-
Greenville calls and they need somebody, I could go. That's just part of our agreement in the contract that
That makes sense.
it's
Yeah.
with the district, so.
Yeah,
It's an
that makes
asset.
sense. I'm just looking for clarification and
That's more
understanding.
him, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's an agree, nobody's even considering, I don't think anybody's even considering that, so it's a fixed contract, it's set, there's
Right.
no, you don't have a lot of flexibility. The only questions in regards to the SRO is what kind of options are available for you to utilize, any other time with an SRO
Well, one
in
of,
terms of, scheduling flexibility.
right. And we were able to, with this year, to be able to, set his schedule. Last year, when they had the SRO schedule, prior to me coming here, the officers pretty much knew what their schedule was a week before, or not a week, a month before, from month to month. So in June, they had no idea what they were working in September, October, November, December. With the Sling app that I have, and then David can actually see it on his phone, and he can see
That's your schedule.
who's working. Our schedule is there, and it's all the way out to the end of the year. It's actually, I think I have it all the way out to the end of next year. which allows the officers to plan trips to wherever they wanna go. At least they have an idea of what they're working. If some of the guys don't have a whole lot of vacation, they can actually do trades with each other, because they have no vacation. I mean, it's good for morale and everything else. So when Brian and I sat down and it's like, okay, so what's the SRO schedule gonna look like this year? We were able to make the schedule so that it would benefit us. So we have Hauser, who's working a Monday and a Friday 1 week, and he's working from 6 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock at night. Same thing on Friday and on that Friday. So he's picking up, because his rotation in the summer is that 2 on, 3 off, 3 on, 2 off, 2 on, 3 off. So, so he's able to pick up those hours, and that's what he's doing. So then if I have like a part-timer come in at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they work until 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Hauser gets out of school, and then he works 2 o'clock to 6 o'clock on the road.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That's
That's
how
a lot
you're
of-
utilizing him, and when he gets done with
Right,
his shift
yeah,
at
and a lot-
school,
Yeah.
then he goes on patrol.
And a lot of that patrol is around that school area too, you know, which
Yeah.
is a big topic at,
Well,
it is,
right,
is
and
tough at
for
that kind of
2
thing.
hours, or for 2 of the shifts, he actually has like the parking lot where he's in there. So he may come back and eat lunch quick because he's been so busy, scarf something down, and then he hits a patrol car and goes and patrols the Greenville, or not Greenville, he doesn't go to Greenville for those, he goes to Hortonville Middle School and Hortonville Elementary School and the high school parking lot.
I would add to that .5 position, and what we try to do this year is, in the past, Officer Hauser's come back here and had to fill 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., okay, so that's 4 hours of patrol. But if he gets busy at the school, it may hold somebody over here because they're done at 2 o'clock. And so what we try to do is minimize that, so he has these 12-hour shifts that he's dedicated just to Hortonville, so we don't have to worry about overtime issues or carryover issues, or are we shorting the school now because he's leaving 15 minutes early to get back here at 2. So we try to minimize that in creating those 12-hour patrol shifts where he's just dedicated here 1 day or 2 days a week versus having both of those responsibilities in 1 day.
So are we, and this is my own ignorance here, are we obligated to provide 24-hour coverage in the village?
I'm gonna let Brian to speak to that one because
I mean, legally, you have to provide police coverage, I think, if you're in a municipality. I mean, I think that's probably a Bob Sorensen question,
Okay.
on the specifics, but I think you have to provide police coverage.
Well, the reason I ask that is I'm still just getting to where I can understand, because and you have to see what my perspective is. I own a business, and I've worked in the corporate world, and I've had openings where I was an engineer, and we had 3 open spots, and we needed somebody filled. I mean, we lost people to to other corporations, and we were interviewing people, and we had letters out to we had letters already written to say here's your job offer, and then HR calls and says hiring freeze, and they said, well, it's for a month, and then we have to come, and then we're like, okay, well, we got to figure out a way to make this work, right? And that's the way the corporate world or even small business world works. And when I called around and I talked to the different chiefs, what I saw was a lot of the municipalities have gaps where they just fall back to the county, right? So if they're when I talked to the Black Creek, he's like, well, yeah, we just put this out there. All he has is part-times. And he's like, well, we put it out there, and here's what needs to be covered. What can you cover? What can you cover? And whatever they can't cover falls back to the county. So my question being,
and you know what the reason is? Because he called me last week asking me if I had any part-timers.
yeah,
He can't find staff.
yeah, but actually, that guy's so lucky. He's got like 2 retired that are his part-timers that don't want anything but part-time. I talked to him. He's a really nice guy. He's got one guy who just wants to work on the weekends, one guy who just wants to work during the week. I was like, geez, how lucky can you get? But what I'm looking to understand, right? And I'm looking for you to help me to get to understanding is why the scheduling and the staffing is to a point where if that position isn't filled immediately, why can't the police department adjust and cover that time? Now, I understand when I read your stuff saying this is how many hours the officer who left was covering. In my experience, and I'm not in local, I'm not in the service industry with the government, except for this. But in my experience, if you have a shortage, either you have a reduction in services. If you have a shortage, you can't fill for staffing. Either you have a reduction in services, or you reduce the staffing and spread it out, right? So you either have times where you don't have coverage, or you spread it out. Instead of having two, you have one at some points. And from speaking to the other chiefs around the state, that seems to be what they've done based on what they had available for staffing. So what I'm looking for is help in understanding why, and I understand scheduling is very difficult because I can't follow your scheduling when you tell me how the 2 on, 3 off, 2 on, 2.
It took me a while.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't, you need to draw me a picture to be able to follow that. But, so I understand that that's complicated. But what I don't have a grasp on is why we can't make adjustments, or you make adjustments to cover, either cover or don't cover for certain times and continue with the existing staff versus having to fill a position right away. That's what I'm looking. That's all the questions that I'm throwing out are directed right there.
Go ahead, Shauna.
Can I ask a question, Jim? When you were calling the towns that were similar in size to Hortonville, you said that you talked to the chiefs and they told you how many full-time, part-time that they had. Did they provide any data on how many calls they handled in that time in a month?
I really didn't talk.
Just trying to compare.
No, well, I mean, the only one that I really had that in-depth of a conversation with was in Black Creek, and they're about 40% smaller than we are.
Population of 1,200.
Yeah, and so they're significantly smaller than we are, and their call volume was really, really low. So I don't have that kind of information. But I did, in the research that I did look on that, one of the chiefs that I talked to said for this region, he said there's a FBI recommendation of 1.6 to 1.7 officers per 1,000 population for this. But then I did a little bit of research after he told me that, and I did a little research, and basically everything that I saw said no. There is no FBI recommendation based off of population, so anything that you see is completely made up. They said they do have recommendations based off the call volume, and they said the reason that they don't have recommendations based off of population is because every municipality's issues are different. If you have a tourist-based town versus a sub, if you're way out in the sticks, even if you have a greater population, you're way out in the middle of nowhere, your call volume is going to be different and less, and the types of calls that you get.
Right. I mean, that makes sense to me. I think that the volume should be number of officers to the call volume ratio is more important. So that's why I was asking that question.
That would be one of my very first questions was, what is the crime prevention calls, because it was such a big number on every single month
But population,
that I didn't understand.
But population plays a big thing too, because our population for the school year, from 7 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, even 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and you can go into 5 and 6 o'clock when you have all the sports and everything else, doubles our population. So you have a lot of, and I was looking at the same statistics that you're seeing.
Yeah.
Because it's something that's sent out by Department of Justice, and it came through, and I mean, I could pull a ton of departments on there, but some of your departments they have, Rome, for instance, there's a good example. Rome's got a budget of like 900 and some thousand, because, and they're our same population, okay? But they have the people that float to that area during the summer. So he hires people for summer and then lays them all off and they're all part-timers, and they're all good with that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he's got his set of full-timers that he keeps, but then yet he's got his part-timers that he has to have, and he has to hire every year for that purpose. But
Johnson
then,
Creek does the same thing.
but
They say
then-
they have
yeah.
5,000 people influx in the summer.
right. So, so, so we have to take that into consideration too, because during the day, we're just, I mean, we're running from call to call to call. Sometimes we're responding to school calls. I mean, I had Friday and yesterday, I had a report of a father who was gonna come to the school and take his kids because he got into a domestic disturbance in Greenville with his wife. He ended up going to jail, so he's threatening to come and take these kids from the school. Well, the school's panicking, both the SROs are busy, so I'm sitting on school, and then next thing I know, at 2 o'clock, she's calling me saying, he's here, in a panic. You know, meanwhile, the officer that was working was on an emergency committal, taking a child from the school and transporting him to the hospital because of some suicidal probably tendencies is what they do for the emergency committal. So, I mean, there was 4 of us on yesterday, and we were running like you would not believe it. So you can't predict what's gonna happen. So I guess my answer to your question would be is, where would we cut? How would we know what to cut? Because some nights we're busier than crap, and some nights there's absolutely nothing going on. But then you have to take the responsibility that to your citizens, that if you decide to cut 4 or 5 hours and something really bad happens in your neighborhood and all the Outagamie County officers are out on something. We had a car upside down. Here's a prime example. We had a car upside down during the day, 10 o'clock in the morning. Guy's drunk, right? He came through
Shocker.
Hortonville, ended up flipping his car upside down just west of town here. You went by it. I was directing traffic.
Yeah.
I was there, Nick was there with his FTO. We were doing the traffic control. 7 Outagamie County officers were taking care of that whole crime scene. There was not another county officer anywhere else in that village. If something would have happened here, one of us would have cleared and we would have came back to the village. But if anything else happened anywhere else in the county, that call was held, or we were assisting taking calls for the county while they were finishing with their crime scene.
So to clarify, if there was something that happened in Black Creek or even Seymour, that county officer would have had to have left and driven all the way from
There.
Hortonia
To there.
because they're, okay.
Do
Well-
other municipalities help out taking some of those calls then?
Some of them do. It depends upon if Outagamie County wants to allow them to go there.
How many rowers are there for our area, for Outagamie County?
1.
So how big an area is that he covers?
It goes all the way from the county lines this way, so the square, so New London, and then all the way down toward Medina, Dale area. He's also in Dale, and then he goes all the way to Highway 47 and all the way up to Highway S.
So then isn't he supposed to be in this area? I understand, unless there's a
Right.
huge emergency,
So-
then he would leave.
So this morning, there
But-
was an accident at S&A, and there was, I counted 9 Outagamie County officers at that call,
Why?
because it was,
No, I'm just saying, why
I
do you
don't know.
need that many? I guess I don't understand why you're leaving your jurisdiction, right here it is, you just said,
well,
and you're
they
going,
don't.
and there's
They
9
don't.
officers at one scene?
They don't have a jurisdiction. If they're needed to leave their section to help cover a call, if we have a weapons call in Dale, you can bet that every officer from Outagamie County is gonna be in Dale, handling that weapons call.
So then if we placed a call, they wouldn't come.
Right. They would put it on hold. It would sit there and it would wait. If it's a retail theft, it would wait. And it could be held open for hours.
And that this morning that happened around the time of school, wasn't it? Wasn't it this, or was it, no, it was before that.
Yeah,
So basically what you're saying is if we relied on a county because we didn't have coverage, we would be in the same position as a lot of the other municipalities that do the same thing. Because Greenville doesn't, the biggest example that I get when I talk to village residents is Greenville.
Mhm.
Right, Greenville's 5 times the size of Hortonville and they don't have a police department. right? And everybody comes to me and says,
They have-
why do we have?
They have a contract with
Yes.
an Outagamie County
And
deputy.
I tell them that too. And I actually saw a county car with a Greenville
Mhm.
decal on it,
Mhm.
right? So they've dedicated additional resources to it. I assume that was after they went back to, after they tried to incorporate. But that is the biggest question that I get from everyone. And it's the same question that I have. You know, how is it that Greenville and other municipalities that are larger than us can rely on the county, but we can't? We can't for even a couple hours a day, or if there happens to be a time where, you know, for a couple of months where we have gaps in our coverage. Why
But
is it
it's
that?
not gonna be any different than the town of Bovina, the town of Hortonia, the town of,
Mhm.
you know, I mean, you could go, all these small municipalities, little townships don't have cops either.
Mhm.
But you're seeing more and more of them that are looking or trying to reach out to other municipalities to try to have them assist with their ordinances, violations and things like that, because the county can't enforce the ordinance
Yes.
violations. So how Greenville's getting away with it, I don't know, but they're paying for 40 hours a week. They're paying for part of that squad car, they're paying for half of that squad car.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's some, it's costly for Greenville to do it. And I
Mhm.
think Greenville's kind of trying to put their feelers out to find out if they need to have a police department or if they should go forward with a police department or not. I don't know really what they're doing, but I know that Outagamie County contracts with certain different areas, like Buchanan. There's another prime example. They pay for 3 officers. I think they might even have 24-hour coverage, and they have all these squad cars that they're paying for too. It's kind of, in my eyes, it's kind of like renting a house versus owning a house. You're paying somebody's mortgage.
Yeah, but we already pay taxes into the county, that's why.
Right.
I mean,
but-
so we
Right.
can utilize the county coverage.
Right.
But I
Um,
would imagine though that if the county knew that we weren't covering with our PD, I would imagine that the county would maybe ask for, like with Greenville, Greenville has a contract that helps cover Greenville. If Hortonville had gaps in coverage, I would imagine, and I would think it would be good business on the county's part to come to Hortonville and say, okay, we know you don't have coverage, we need to contract if you want an officer within, you know, I mean, but
Yeah,
even then,
but-
that county,
They wouldn't do that.
they wouldn't, well, you can't say what somebody would or wouldn't do.
I mean, if we're only doing this for a couple months, we're not talking forever. We're saying just, you know, could we possibly save some money and just hire your person in December and bring them in January?
Is the budget, this is what we got today, you had sent
This
that.
isn't correct.
What's, okay, where did this come from originally?
Jane told me it's correct. I got it from Jane.
Jane,
Okay, I have a sheet that says 831. I have this number. I have a sheet that says 916. It's the same number. It also says 731 on it. I feel like something's not right.
The 916. I asked Jane. Jane dropped it off on my desk this morning because I was out on a call. She dropped it on my desk. I came up to her. I said, what is the 73119? Or she says, that is as of all of payroll and bills at that time, 9/16 of 2019.
So she looked up each and every one of these accounts. And
Yes.
that's what this came out to.
Mhm.
Because then I have this one, which I don't know. I must have got this one a while ago, and it says 831 has the exact same thing. So then we paid nothing in this month.
I don't have that either, I, 831, I don't know where that.
Payroll was this week, so today's, it would've went out, this report was pulled on the 16th, which was Monday, so it would not have had any of the payroll for the past 2 weeks.
Because
Mine says 917, and I got
Okay.
that one today from Chief.
Because payroll was completed today.
this is the exact same thing I have, and it says 831 on it.
I don't have that,
And
yeah, I
this
don't
is
know where
the-
you're getting all this.
This is the exact same thing that it says here, you can match every single number.
Okay, so you mean
Yeah,
916
so-
here, but on here it
So
says
it's
917.
just, the cost is out there, but the check, the dollar amount won't be changed until the check actually is cut and comes out of the account.
It populates, so today
Yeah.
after Libby did payroll, it would populate again. Cause what,
They should accrue it.
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So what you're seeing on the blue copy, Julie, is from our working budget. That's a Fund 100, if you look on the detail, it's a Fund 100 expense detail. So those are, I watched Jane pull that report on the 16th.
But the payroll, this recent payroll isn't on there.
Probably not,
And
because
that's when
she
we had to
started that.
pay out our
Yes.
last officer that left, and that was quite a huge sum.
And I have that figure here, so I didn't make copies, but, for the clarification, final payout for terminated full-time employee, $8,181.06. That's a figure that, was requested,
Can you send that out too tomorrow
Yep,
at work? Yeah.
That'd be vacation,
sick time, vacation, he had a few hours of sick leave, comp time. Primary was vacation, looks like he just started a new cycle of his vacation. So,
Then my
and then
question is,
sick leave was the majority of it.
there's, like $148,599 difference then to go to the end of the year on just the first line, your chief and full-time officers. So why are we putting so much into this police budget? Because that would leave like $42,000 a month for the next 3 months. You know, I'm just saying, if we have this much excess in this police budget, then we should be cutting this at budget time and using that money somewhere else.
I don't know where you're looking at, Jeannie.
Okay, the very first line
What's the schedule
of the
of?
budget, okay, the
Okay.
very first line, your chief and full-time officers. You're saying right up till now, we have 187,620 through 9/16. Okay, and then it says approved budget, 336,219. So if you take those two, subtract the one from the other, that leaves us for the next 3.5 months, just on that first line of the salaries, $148,599.
I have different numbers on the one that I'm looking at. The one that I'm looking at has year-to-date, $213,920 expense out of approved budget
I don't have that.
of $336,290.
I don't have that
I don't know.
No,
Is that what you
Does
have?
yours say 17?
What do you have?
Everybody's got 16.
this one,
We weren't given that then.
I have 916 of 19.
No. I have 187,620. So
That's what I
does
have.
Julie. That's what we were
I
given.
don't have that one.
That's the one, this is the one I sent out.
Okay.
I printed it off the computer.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have that one.
this
I have
from
a
Chief today.
different one. I have a different
This
one.
is the one that I asked Jane this morning.
Oh, we don't have that.
Yeah, you do.
I think
It's the one I
she
sent
emailed it
you.
to us.
I sent it to you.
I swear. I
It
just
says,
printed
mine
it.
says 100,
You
mine
have
says
it,
100,
Jeannie.
mine says 187,620.
It's from the last meeting.
Look on the column.
It's from the
Sure.
committee of the whole meeting. It's the one
It's
with
right here. Dan,
187,
Jean,
620.
Shauna, Jim.
Okay,
But
It's from the
we've got
committee of the whole.
different
Yeah.
columns, so those have different dates on columns.
because I'm like, that's a lot of gap.
Okay, but now, when I came in June of last year. And then we lost our village administrator shortly after that. Then Russ came in and Russ plugged in all the numbers. And I wasn't part of plugging in all the numbers for payroll. So that's where that could be, because now this year, I have an actual spreadsheet of how many hours and where I'm at, so that I can see better. It's the same thing with, once you get down to the police materials, I have a spreadsheet that every time I do an invoice, I put it in that spreadsheet so that I can see when it comes to budget time that, oh, I must have, 9,000 set aside for vehicle fuel, and I only went through 5,500 by the end of the year. Then I can lower that down to whatever I think, but all these numbers were put in by Russ for me. So I had nothing to do with any of the payroll portion numbers.
So essentially what you're saying, Jeannie, is that there's this excessive amount of money left over for the police department, and right now we're talking whether or not we should fill a position for 3 months.
Well,
I mean, help me out here, because I'm trying to figure that out. If you're,
yeah, I'm trying to understand where we're at.
Right.
Because it's just
But,
like,
but that's the reason
Then
why
let's-
those numbers are, the top numbers are where they're at. I
Yeah.
mean, and that's what I'm looking at. And I I'm confused and I'm like, okay, we have the money in our budget for this year. We're gonna have excess money left in the budget for this year because of the way that these numbers are balancing out. Why are we discussing this?
I'm clueless right now.
I can answer that, and this is what I struggle with, okay? And I'm gonna go right back to the SRO contract, and that's why I asked if that was an option to redact the halftime officer, okay? We collect, year-to-date, $58,010 for Officer Barr. His total compensation from the village is $75,622.
Does that count the summertime he works as well, correct?
Correct.
Full-time, just village, not,
Correct.
okay, it's only 9 months.
Correct. So what I'm saying, there's a gap, okay? So that's a gap, that's a village expense that we have to acquire, okay? Same thing with Hauser. $69,637 of total compensation, of which we retain $26,458 from the district, okay? I had to ask the questions because I know they do some summer coverage, but my whole point would it make sense to put a halftime officer as a part-timer in the school district? I get Hauser is good at what he does. I've taken Chris's, she said he's great with those kids.
I've witnessed it myself in the
So-
schools. It's amazing
The
what he
schools
does.
love them.
Just asking questions. That's all we're doing. We're in investigative here, okay? The other thing I struggle with, 8.4% increase in health insurance last year. 12.4% increase in health insurance this year. That's our best deals out of 6 or 7 options, okay? You total those together, that equates to 1 full-time position of pay in the last 2 years. We're expecting it until it's fixed from the top down. It's gonna be the same way next year. They're expecting double-digit increases for the next decade on health insurance until it's fixed. We can say all you want about writing tickets. We have a problem collecting tickets. Our court system's not producing. We had some reluctancy to go after the Greenville police contract when that was a viable option. Chris and I had conversations about that. There was a scare tactic that we had discussed, potentially that we may alienate the village from the county. So you gotta factor that in. That was something
We
that we
do.
discussed.
We do, you know, you have to, if you stick your hand in that beehive, and clearly Greenville is happy with what they have. They're happy with what the setup that they have. So-
Greenville is fortunate. If they're getting by with 8 hours of coverage, I don't know how they're doing it, and I'll be real honest with you, if we could do that here, that'd be great. But I don't think it's an option. That's not a viable, in my opinion, that's not a viable coverage option. 8 hours a day.
As their population changes, I think they will revisit. We have such a
Absolutely.
nucleus of a population, especially during school time.
Right.
I think their situation, although we can compare Greenville, it's apples and oranges. It's such a difference.
So can you go back, what was the one thing you were talking about? Because I would like to, when you say something, I would like to
Absolutely.
kind of,
Sure.
you were talking about the pay and stuff like that. Not for the SRO, but, because what we're looking at is right now, Kazuski is making $28.28 per hour, okay? If we put a part-timer into that position, that part-timer is only gonna be making $21.53 in next year's contract. But it's only making $21.11 this year's contract. So we have a savings of a little over $7 per hour. And then if you start doing more of the math, it comes out to be a savings for next year of over $14,000
I need to correct something. You said if we put a part-timer in there, you mean
into a
new-
full-time position.
A part-timer into the full-time.
Right.
So
Okay, I wasn't following, I was
Yeah.
completely
Yeah,
lost.
I need
You're
to
gonna have to
clarify.
rewind that and start
I need
over.
to
'cause
clarify.
I didn't follow that at all, no.
So it's, Kazuski was making, as a full-timer, Kazuski was making $28.28, okay? That didn't include his benefits or anything like that. So now if we take a part-timer and put him into the full-time slot, this year, he will be making $21.11 per hour.
Okay,
So there's that savings between
so $6 an hour, $7 an hour.
$7
Okay.
$7 an hour. And then once you go into that, because that first year, that probationary full-time officer doesn't get any vacation time, doesn't get any sick time.
Mhm.
So, the only thing that the person would get would be like comp time.
Okay.
And comp time is very, very far and few, is it not? When was the last time you had comp time? okay? They don't get overtime and they don't
Yeah.
get comp time, which is a bonus.
Yeah.
Because, so that's gonna save the department alone, okay? But then you have like, I mean, he says, I don't hardly ever get overtime. Seymour paid out last year $50,000 in overtime. Our overtime budget this year is at, what did you say, 4285?
Yep.
And the reason for that being is because in the union contract, when I went and I was working from June until December, and they didn't have a schedule, because we were doing it month to month yet. Basically, what I did was, is on all the holidays, I gave them off on holidays, and I put the part-timers in there because they were cheaper, right? And get guys off of the road, and they could spend time with their families. Well, with the new union contract, they're working the holidays, and they're being paid, like every other agency, double time and a half. They get their 8 hours holiday plus time and a half for 12 hours. So, we sat down, we talked about this, and we're like, shit, you know, oh shit, what are we gonna do? Because now you have that extra cost to the department, which we've been factoring it in, and with our numbers, we're doing just fine, but that's the way that they wanted it. They wanted the 12-hour shifts, they work an 8-hour on Sunday. So when they work a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it's a 12, 12, and an 8.
You just said that, did you say Brian brought in 58,000 on the SRO?
Correct. 58,000,
Okay.
10, 52.
What are we paying out, because we're hiring another officer in order to be able to fill that position that he's in the school? What are you actually now paying out to hire a new officer because he's in the school and a half-time's in the school?
But the
So
school's
we're
paying
short
us.
to cover shifts because they're in the schools. What is it costing you to bring in that new officer full-time?
She said that last
And,
week.
and that is why, you know, really, you aren't making, because you have to subtract that new officer's 58,000.
Right,
Yes.
but the school's paying us for him to be in there.
It doesn't make any.
I guess I'm lost and I don't know.
But you're hiring someone to replace him.
No, I'm hiring somebody to replace
So
Kazuki.
it kind of erases what you brought in,
No, I'm
because now
hiring-
you're paying out with a new officer
Right.
to cover.
I'm hiring somebody to replace Kazuki, not the SRO, Kazuki.
Well, because you're short
Right.
officers, because you have 1.5 in school. Where, are we making that money? Literally, are we making it? Because you're paying out now for an officer to cover.
You're not.
You're short hours to cover your shifts.
Come time for
Because
the new
9
SRO
months, you have
contract.
these officers in schools. You're saying you're bringing this in, but it's not total revenue.
I'm bringing what in?
You say you're bringing in 58,000 for Brian, but
Right.
you just hired another officer to be able to cover his shift.
No. Brian, help me.
So we have a contract with the school district for those days.
Yes.
Those hours are covered by the school district, wages, benefits. The position that we're speaking about was a patrol officer. So these are patrol officer hours that we're having to cover right now. So I guess if you're saying we would take the school resource officer to cover those hours, then we'd be neglecting our duty to
Contract.
the contract with the school, because then we would have to,
Well,
my understanding
I'm
is
just saying,
strictly, I'm sorry, I don't.
we're saying there's a benefit
I
to
hear
the
ya.
contract because of bringing in revenue. But because you are missing, you're not here, you're in the school,
Mhm.
we have to hire another officer because now we're short to cover your hours and half of Hauser's.
So are you proposing that we would
I
get rid of the
guess,
school contracts to cover hours here?
or can we make do with what we have? With the officers we have, can we cover those shifts without hiring a new officer? Then we would be making some money off of your contract.
I don't think that's the intent of the contract. I don't think it's that we
Right.
gain, I think it's that it's a wash.
Just a wash.
It is.
It is, it's just,
Yeah,
it's,
and
you're not
that's
really
my question.
making
Is it a
anything.
wash? Has anyone calculated what the cost is for the 8 hours that we're giving? Is it a wash? Is it $84,470, or are we losing money there? Because if it is a wash, you know, it's a moot point on whether or not the SRO is creating a need or not?
It is-
Because if it's a wash, that money's coming from the schools, right? So,
Yep, it is a wash, because what Brian did was, he looked at the wages and benefits for 2 years. So the contract is split up for 2019 through 2020, because our contract goes through the 21st, and then he went from 2020 to 2021. So basically what he does is he breaks it down. He does his wages, so his wages are 46,476, plus then he takes out for FICA, dental, life insurance, health insurance, WRS. We have mileage that are included for him to drive back and forth from the school every day, 1,000 miles at a half a mile, at 50 cents a mile, which is the state rate. And then they also pay for half of his clothing allowance, because each officer is given $600 or $500 for a clothing allowance, so they pay $384.62 for that. And then we divide that by 1,600 hours. We include the overtime rate, because we are, in that contract, we put a number aside for $5,000, so whatever amount of overtime. So say for instance, he's working 40 hours in the school, they want him at a game or a homecoming or a prom or something like that, then they pay him his overtime rate to be at those special events. So then we do the same thing with the halftime SRO.
So, okay,
does
so
it count for the fact that we are potentially having to pay overtime on our regular officers to cover that?
We don't have, we
You know
don't,
what I mean?
yeah, we normally don't have to. We don't, Brian, because Brian's not on the schedule, so nobody would, there would be no overtime impacted.
And my schedule does not impact the patrol schedule
Yeah.
whatsoever. And I would say that, to go back to that school contract, to my understanding, the school contract isn't looked at as a revenue source, it's looked at as a service. And I mean, if we're looking at that contract as revenue, I guess the answer would be no.
Yeah,
It's
it's an
not a
ounce of
revenue
prevention,
source.
pound of cure,
Right.
sort of thing.
So,
I mean,
yeah, I
it's,
think it's a public safety
yeah.
resource.
And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but then we're also asking taxpayers now to pay for an officer to cover, because we're missing that officer and a half.
We're not missing an ounce
No.
of pressure in half.
Yeah,
It's
we're
covered
not-
by the school.
Well, you're
district.
saying we're short of covering shifts, $300.
Because
we lost
Officer
an officer.
Kazuski left.
That's the responsibility of the
That-
village's patrol. The school district pays for my contract
Right.
for 9 months out of the
The
year.
hours that are short right now are the hours that Officer Kazuski is leaving behind when he left.
If it
That's-
would have been, the officer in the school that left,
Right.
then
That would've-
contractually, we would have to put somebody
Yeah,
in there.
we'd have to replace.
So it's kind of apples and oranges. It's-
So, I have a question about that. So I understand this is separate, but as long as we're here discussing this stuff. The SRO contract, right? So you detailed the different things, and I don't know what all the acronyms stand for. But are there other expenses that we're not accounting for, right? Because when you have somebody on the staff, right? I mean, you guys have qualifications you have to do, you have education, you have pension, you have to maintain a certain number of radios at a certain cost because you have a certain staffing. You have to have a certain number of patrol cars and so on to cover everything. Have all of those numbers been accounted for in the SRO in what they're paying us? Because from what you said, and I have one other specific question. So what you said so far is it's a wash minus half of his clothing allowance because he's a 40-hour officer, is not available to the village, but we're paying half, at the very minimum, we're paying $300 a year to have him because the SRO contract only covers half of the clothing allowance.
Well,
So at the very minimum, we're paying that,
no,
then
his clothing allowance is 500, they're paying 384.
Okay.
And
Yes.
3 months out of the year, he is patrol.
Oh,
He is
yes.
patrol.
Yeah,
Okay,
so I
awesome, awesome.
During
I
the summer,
forgot that, yeah.
during the summer, both of them come out onto the road,
Okay,
okay? So then they're put into the rotation,
okay.
okay? So Brian Hauser goes to the rotation,
So that's where the split for the clothing allowance came from. So
Right,
that makes sense.
so-
Okay.
right?
Thanks
So
for
then
pointing that
when
out.
summer comes about, we only need 4 part-time shifts per month for
Okay.
8 hours, and they're all on Sundays.
Okay.
So once school lets out, we're back to full staff. But we won't be if we can't replace Kazuski. Okay, but then, so during a week like this week here, we have 60 hours that we need to cover, which is normal. that Kazuski would cover, you know, a certain amount of them, and then I would pick up the others, or we would have the part-timers pick up whatever's left over.
To that question, and I think Dan touched on that earlier, I think in the 16, 17 years that we've had the SRO contract now, I don't think that we've looked at that administrative fee, but it's certainly something that we can look at, and I get.
Well, I mean,
what- you know,
if,
I'm sorry.
typically, if you're, you know, training somebody and have a trained person over there, I mean, they're not green going over there, your experience and everything else, there might be something that really dictates that it would be fair, put a little something over the top, but at least a percent or something of the
Yep.
bill for doing the paperwork. I mean, that's more than standard in the industry.
Yep.
Yeah, as long as we're investigating everything,
Yeah.
it's prudent to look into the
And I'm not
specifics
saying-
and
I'm
the
not saying
numbers to
to-
make sure that we're not losing
To hit the
anywhere.
school district, I think
Okay.
we want to be there.
Right.
You know what?
Yeah.
Does
Oh, yeah.
that, just, side note, does the SRO, does that officer ever come out to help,
Yes.
with another call?
And I was gonna make that point earlier, I think we look at, you know, we talked about the SRO going, the two SROs covering the district during the day, but I will say, the district certainly understands, and we have an agreement that if there's an emergency in the village, you know, part of my responsibilities may be that I have to go assist my agency with that emergency, so
Do you
And is that where
deduct
the
that
overtime
time from the
gets
school
figured in?
then or not? Or is
No.
that?
typically, yes,
Because
I mean, if we're, especially if
His
it's a
overtime is for
longer.
games, dances,
Yeah,
he may get stuck over longer for a sexual assault or some type of investigation.
okay.
But like today is a clear example. So I get dispatched for a disturbance of some lady banging on somebody's door and everything else, okay? We don't really know what we're going at, we don't know what kind of call. Normally a disturbance, a domestic, a welfare check, you have multiple officers that are responding. Both Officer Hauser and Officer Barr stepped up and said, Chief, do you want us to come back you up? Okay? By the time I got there, I knew who I was dealing with, I knew all of a sudden you start recognizing. So Hauser was on his way to a meeting, I told him he could disregard so that he could head to his meeting in Greenville, and I told Brian I didn't need him.
Okay.
So, I mean, they'll come out and they'll help me. The same thing with us, that Brian was busy on some situation with an emergency committal. Nick was transporting one to a hospital for him. Hauser was, I think he was en route coming back. They had that call. So I responded to the school. So during the day, the daytime officer can be responding to calls at the school because both SROs are tied up.
Well, the
It's not
vehicle-
like, we just don't go, oh, well, I'm
But
sorry.
don't you immediately, like with Officer Hauser, don't you immediately incur overtime charges? Because he's already 40 hours a week at school. So as soon as you call him, he's instantly on overtime, right?
It's an 80-hour work period for the, before it's overtime
if
for
it's
the
like
police.
1 o'clock in the afternoon,
It's not 40.
he's not getting paid twice, he's not getting paid by the school and the
Yeah,
municipality.
but you're obligated to provide a certain number of hours to the school. So you end up, if you leave, you end up having to make that time up somewhere else at the school.
Yeah, we do, and I think what Dan was asking too, I think if there's an extended period, like we're talking 4 hours that I might have to go out on a call in the village, then that
Yeah.
would be something we would bill to the village versus the school, and so we try to work through that, on our timesheets as well. So, you know.
I'm just asking, I'm not trying to be
But I
nitpicky
think
about it. I'm just trying to
day-to-day-
understand the specifics.
Is
Of
it
Yeah,
fair to
day
say
to
though, it's rare when that?
Yeah, and I would say day to day, if we're up there for 15 minutes, we're not like, well, we're gonna make sure we chalk that up to the school, or vice versa, that I'm billing the village for 15
I
minutes.
think that's a big benefit to the rest of the officers to know they have a backup.
Correct.
With somebody, and I'm happy with that, so.
And the vehicle that you use, Brian, that's our oldest vehicle, isn't it?
2012.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Well,
That's,
squad cars you normally rotate every 3 and 6.
Okay.
So you go, what they normally do is 3 years for a patrol and 6 years for a chief. So it being an SRO vehicle, and it goes from here to there, and sometimes to Appleton, and sometimes to New London. I mean, he gets in, sometimes he'll have to go check on a truancy over in Greenville or up in Shiocton. So it moves a little bit, but not a whole lot. You know, we stuck a water pump in it this year.
Yeah,
That
so-
was,
See,
huh?
typically with equipment, and I don't know if you're only charging them mileage. It should take in, some of the maintenance and everything, but a half an hour. It's not gonna on that one.
So, I'm still looking for something to grab onto with the ability to schedule. So let me throw a hypothetical out and we can see if we can go through it that way. If next year the real estate market tanks, right, and then they go through and everybody gets pissed off because their taxes are based on their property value and property value is really low and you reduce the property values in Hortonville, right? Which is gonna happen. I mean, we just went through it, 5-6 years ago and real estate was garbage and now it's been a boom ever since then, right? But as soon as that property value goes down, the village's, property taxes go down right with it. And the village board comes through and does the budget and say that happened in this situation, right? So say it happened, this year and we come back to you in 2 months with your budget doesn't have enough to put on, the sixth officer, the sixth full-time officer.
Mhm.
What do you do?
I mean, at that point, then that's when you sit down. That makes sense to me. This doesn't make sense to me, where we have the money in the budget and we can fill the position. But, I mean, if something like that would happen and we know that the village is it's going into crisis mode, I mean, that's, as a department head, you sit down with the village administrator and say, well, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna fix this issue? And, I mean, in the union contract, it talks about, layoffs and everything
Yep.
else and how we go about doing that, but I guess if you get to that
See,
mode.
from my standpoint, I see the other side of the thing too, hate layoffs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the,
right,
I
but,
went through that 3 times.
right,
And so before you bring somebody on, you wanna have a long-range plan
right.
and not, so I think this is an appropriate time to talk about that staffing,
Yeah.
rather than.
Rather than after you hire the
Right,
person.
After,
but
That's
based
why
off
because
of,
we're dictating it now,
Right. but
rather
ba-
than the
Yep.
taxes dictating.
But based off of what Kerber Rose is talking, in the meetings that I've attended and everything else, I mean, they're saying that, 2017 was a crappy year?
I know we were tough there for.
Right,
a few years.
2018 was gonna get better, 2019 was gonna get even better, 2020 was gonna be even better, and 2021 was gonna be great. I mean, so financially, you're at the same meetings I'm at, and I'm hearing that we're doing well. We have
However,
growth and everything else, but, I mean, if the budget's there, we're gonna pay somebody a lesser fee, a lesser dollar amount, by $6, $7 an hour.
But that's a salary. The other thing
Right.
was, what's the increase in the benefits going from the part-time to the full-time? Does that erase that $6 an hour and then move it to a
No.
negative?
No,
No, because the part-time gets the same benefits as full-time?
yeah, huh? No,
No.
part-time don't
No.
get benefits.
Okay, so, but when you move the part-time to the
Unless they're working
full-time.
over 30 hours per week.
Okay, but but you're looking at, if you take a part-time to a full-time, there's a $6 an hour difference. What is the
$7.
difference? What's the difference in the benefits?
Probably about 60% of the weight for better.
But if we want to use the term hiring freeze, well, then I say then as somebody who represents all the departments in the village, and I'm not trying to bring other departments into it, but I'm saying we need to recognize if it's a hiring freeze with one, it's a hiring freeze with all. We sat and listened to the school district talked about projected numbers. We know that we've got census coming up next year. We know we're growing. I know our census is going to push us over 3,000. Our call volumes have gone up. This is not, I feel very uncomfortable decreasing public safety when we have a number that shows we're okay. And if we're gonna use the term hiring freeze, then I guess then that, to me, goes across the board. Then we're gonna say, all across the village, we're gonna do an entire hiring freeze in every department until we officially say this is no longer a hiring freeze. But we currently have the numbers to support this. We're not adding anything. We're simply replacing what was currently, if Officer Kazuski hadn't left, we wouldn't even have this discussion. We wouldn't be here if he hadn't left. And now, because he left, all of a sudden it seems like, oh, red flags. There are no red flags. I'm looking at these numbers.
There are red flags though, and that's what we haven't discussed yet, okay? So, going into the budgeting cycle, and that is why I've been discussing this. Is it the right thing to be part-time or full-time? I'm gonna read 5 numbers here, okay? These are
I've got
total,
numbers too, go ahead.
these are total compensation for 5 officers for the 2019 year. $90,667, $75,622, $85,625, $69,637, $76,744, for a total of $398,000 in total compensation for 5 full-time employees. That's projected to increase by $20,000 next year. That doesn't include an insurance adjustment yet, or any other compensation that we may have to add. We're looking at potentially every year adding 1 full-time equivalent in cost. And at this point, we have to look at whether it's smart to put full-time or part-time to minimize the insurance, because the insurance is something we cannot.
But can we
Control.
afford, I see here over $7,000 it costs to train a full or part-time officer. And clearly, anybody graduating from the academy wants full-time. So we're gonna
Absolutely.
churn and burn part-timers through here. 3 part-timers through a 12-month period covers that 20,000 that you're talking about. So how many part-timers have we churned and burned through here in the last,
6.
okay? So
Okay.
6 of them at that over $7,000. I think we need to look at the bigger picture here, and I get it, you've got the whole budget to think about, but if it costs over $7,000 to get somebody through here, whether they're part-time or full-time, we know that a part-timer doesn't see this as the end game. This is not they want full-time, they want benefits. So if we're gonna churn 6 part-timers through here at $7,000 a piece, now we're at 40,000 plus. We just shot ourselves in the foot.
That's assuming that you don't
And
lose
if
any
they work
full-time.
over 30 hours, they're gonna get overtime, which means they get benefits.
Yeah.
Not overtime, they get benefits then.
So I mean, to me, it just seems like we are trying to cut off one end of the blanket to add length to the blanket at the other end. I mean, I just feel like when I look at, we would say a part-timer, it only costs X amount of dollars and a full-timer costs this amount of dollars for training. When I look at that training amount and I say, okay, well, it's gonna cost $7,000 regardless of whether it's full-time or part-time. A full-time officer generally will stick around longer, and maybe that's something we look at in the next police union contract, that we look for something that puts something for longevity in there, some incentive for longevity.
Yeah,
You had
but-
mentioned, Jim, something about,
They have longevity.
They
but-
have longevity.
no, well, you're talking, and maybe I shouldn't use that term, but you talked about a part-time payback but that was, maybe if they weren't part of the union. Well, the full-timers aren't part of the union. Maybe when we renegotiate this contract, when that comes up, we do a payback where if you've been here, if you stay for 3 years, okay, the goal is to get you here at least for 3 years. You leave within the first year, you pay that training back. You leave within the second year, you pay half it back. You leave the
Toronto and
third year.
Hoboken are doing that right now.
I mean, a
No,
full-timer,
Washington
we
doesn't.
have that option to throw
No,
something
Washington
in that police union contract to help keep that officer here. I just feel like we're churning and burning, and we're actually spending more to funnel through a bunch of part-timers than if we would just, okay, let's get a full-timer who wants to stay here. And then we don't have that expense. They've already been trained. That part-timer that you're discussing maybe bumping up has already been trained. So that $7,000 amount. So now if that part-timer decides to leave to go to a full-time job elsewhere, now we have to pull another part-timer and we're sending the $7,000. We're not gaining anything here by churning and burning
How many
employees.
full-timers have we lost?
I'm just gonna ask.
Because that's why we're here
For the last
also.
couple of
We
years,
need
how
to
many have
realize
we
that.
lost?
Yeah, how many full-timers have we lost in the last couple
Well,
of
we
years?
lost one to Outagamie County.
Okay.
That was 2 years ago, Justin Ross, wasn't
Yeah.
it?
Brian, this is a better question.
Yeah, so we lost Kazuski and Ross in the last 3 years. What I can tell you is when we decided, I know we're not here to talk about, these decisions in the past, but when we decided to add this position in 2015, I think the number we were at that time of the proposal was somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 14 part-timers we went through in 3 years, and I did the numbers today. I think we're on 12 part-timers in the last 5 again. So those are those numbers that I think Julie's speaking to of, we're spending a lot of money on startup for these part-time officers, and where's our investment?
Over
We're not
and
getting
over
our
and
return.
over and over.
And to speak to those, the retention of the full-time, maybe that's an idea in union, because as much as you want them to stay for cost purposes, we want them to stay too.
Yes.
Because we have a large investment there.
Well-
And so,
that was one of the questions that I asked every one of the chiefs that I talked to. I said, look, the larger market has moved to a more mobile type of a market, right? And every single one of the chiefs that I talked to said there's a shortage of enforcement, of officers available in the state of Wisconsin.
I have a video that says that.
Yep, oh, and that's
Yeah.
not a good point for getting somebody. Let me finish here.
Yep.
So there's a shortage, right? And the overall market has moved to where people pick up and they move. You know, they see that if you stay at one place, that you can advance slowly over time. But if you jump around, you can make big leaps in your career. You can expand the breadth of your experience. You can make yourself more valuable. Okay, so every one of the chiefs that I talked to, I said, this is becoming more and more commonplace in the general market. I said, does that translate to what you see in law enforcement? And every single one of them said, yes, it is. Not quite to the same degree where everybody's leaving within 4 to 6 years. They said, but it's not the same as what it used to be. So you're losing more full-time because there's larger municipalities, there's more pay, there's more flexibility in scheduling, even for a full-timer to leave. So
Yeah.
the equation isn't as simple as part-timers leave, they're guaranteed. So if we
Oh.
get full-timers, you're still losing them too. So
Absolutely.
there's some sort of a
I agree, Jim.
there's a
and-
great
and
point
that's why-
somewhere where it says, okay, if we were the average of losing full-time and the average of losing part-time, what would be the perfect mix? And it is that's one of the things that we're trying to understand, right? I'm trying to understand why we can't adjust to the staffing that we have. I'm trying to understand what's the best option moving forward, right? And that's why I called and talked and I spent hours on the phone talking to people about it.
But every department is different, and every department has different things going on in their departments. I mean, the major reason why Kazuski left was because he likes the drug portion of it. Clintonville's got a huge drug problem. He's like, there's drug houses on every block. That's why he went there. And
So opportunities that weren't presented by Hortonville, we don't have enough drug abuse.
But that's what he wanted to do. They had a drug unit. They
I'm
had
just being
canine,
facetious here.
you know, they had canine dogs, you know, so he's young enough in his career, he wanted to do that.
Yeah,
Sean
it's
on the-
mobility,
Sean
so
on the
he's
other
going to
hand-
add to his,
Right.
he's going to add to his experience and his value.
Right.
So when the next time he wants to go out and shop for another position, he's going to be worth that much more
Right.
because he's had the small town general experience. Now he's had the deeper, drug enforcement, and, so that's the trend of the overall market is mobility.
But then you have like Sean's happy with our department. Sean's not gonna go. Jason's happy with our department. He's not gonna go. Brian's happy. Brian likes what he's doing, so he's not gonna go. I mean, Sean, do you agree? Do you like your schedule?
Yeah.
Because scheduling is a huge issue. Because I did the same thing you did. I called around and I talked to chiefs, okay? And I had called Keel. Keel absolutely hates their scheduling. They get I think it's one weekend off a month. You got the guys that they're older. Most of the full-time officers are in their late 40s. They're getting ready to retire. They got plenty of vacation, so if they want to take off. But they have 5 part-timers, and the part-timers can't work. They don't work. They have other jobs someplace else.
That was what I got
But
to.
then you
They're all
have,
limited on what
but
they
then
can
you
do.
have
Yeah.
they have the ability, because they have their part-timers who are willing to work, because one of them works for Shacton.
Mhm.
So I'm like, there's my guy I'm gonna go to, I'm gonna ask him some questions, and he said he's just waiting his time out until one of those full-timers in Kiel leaves. But he's working 3 part-time jobs,
Mhm.
and he's willing to do that. He's older, but he's waiting for that full-time, but in reality, he's not hanging around because he said he doesn't like the schedule. So I think he's trying to get his training and get his feet wet and get the experience, and he may go someplace else, but it's because of scheduling. It all boils down to, if somebody likes where they are. Nick, now I'm throwing you in the spot. Okay, so Nick came to our department because of Matt Ninham. okay? We had extravaganza, okay? We did Easter egg coloring with all the kids.
Mhm.
We thought we'd have 50 people in this room. We packed this room. We ran out of eggs and everything else. He came and he volunteered. From that point on, he liked Hortonville. He had considered settling down in Hortonville if he could get a position here in Hortonville. But because he's a part-timer looking for full-time because he wants to get married, he's got to have a full-time job in order to support his wife. So he's out looking. And he doesn't know that I know, but he's in his final stages at Oneida PD. He just
So
got off
if-
of training last week and he's gonna be gone
For a full-time position.
for a full-time
So if he
position.
came on full-time, what are his chances of advancing up the ladder? Or is he, we're gonna get him in here and we're gonna lose him too, because.
It depends upon what let's ask him, he's here. I mean, what are why do you like Hortonville?
Well, for instance, I'm Officer Burkhart, by the way. So, Hortonville is a really close-knit community. You know, everybody is constantly together. I started working here at Hortonville, loved it, in hopes of becoming full-time. However, through this process, you know, is there gonna be a full-time position open? Is there not? You know, I have to look out for the best interests of me. So, you know, I am in the final process for Oneida. However, if there was a full-time position opened up here, you know, I mean, that's more incentive to stay here. You know, this is a great community. I like serving it. But, you know, I speak on all the part-timers who are getting into this career who, I mean, we need benefits and we need a full-time position, you know, and this community needs that too. So if there isn't one open, then you're just throwing money down the drain.
We just spent $7,000 training you, and your replacement, we're gonna spend another $7,000 training your replacement.
It's getting harder and harder to find part-timers too. I mean, when I started here in 2003, I applied for a part-time position. I was one of 100 applicants. You know, and at that point in my career too, to get a full-time spot, you'd be one of 300 applicants, you know, for one position. And nowadays, you talk to these agencies. I was in a process in Wakanda 3 years ago, and there was 18 of us for I think they were hiring 2, and there was 18 of us that were applied for those positions. No one wants to do this job anymore to begin with, and no one needs to work part-time anymore. When I got out of school, you either you found a full-time job and you were lucky to do that, or you wanted to work part-time to keep your certification, which you had 2 years to find a job where you would lose, so you'd have to start all over again, and you get experience to get into some of these places that you go to. And there were places I went to when I got out of school that said, well, go find some experience somewhere part-time for 2 or 3 years and come back and we'll hire you. And nowadays, you don't have to do that. These guys that get out of school, they're like, forget it. There's 15 agencies that were at the school last week headhunting us. I can go work for one of them and get on full-time right away. There's no reason to work part-time. The other side of that is, though, too, is I work part-time here. I got 6 kids and a wife. I can't work part-time here, you know, with the off chance that maybe next week I'll have 3 shifts, and the week after that I might have 6 shifts, but then I might not have a shift. I mean, there was a period when Sarah Knapp and Chad Clayman left, 6 months prior to that, there were 3 months where I didn't work a shift here, and that was because I was close to the number where if I would have gone over, you guys would have had to pay me retirement. So now as a part-time employee with no other job, how do I support a family with no income? Now you can't expect Tyler or Nick to not have another job on top of that. So we can hire 15 part-time people, but we can't rely, now they're gonna be fighting over 5 shifts a month, and otherwise they have no other income. And if they have a family or whatever, they're just gonna be sitting waiting by the phone for us to call them and work. We can't expect them to do that. They need some sort of other employment. So now when we do have an open shift, now we have to make 15 phone calls to see if one of those guys can work. And when they all tell us no, I work my other job, I have childcare issues, I have a doctor's appointment, I'm gonna be out of town, and we get through all 15, now you're gonna be paying me or Brian or whoever else $40-some an hour to work that shift. At what point is there a cost savings there, I guess is my question there too.
Chief, do we have, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but kind of going along with what Officer Stevens is saying, do we have an obligated amount of hours we've told our part-timers that we would do? So like, let's say we do hire a full-time at this time, and we get into budget season next year and we realize things are pretty tight. You know what, we made a bad decision. I'll be the first to admit it, we made a bad decision. Could the part-timers be flexed down?
Absolutely. And they do. And, Tyler?
That would incentivize
I'll,
them to leave.
I'll kind of answer that question.
Depends on
too.
Yeah.
the other jobs are working.
Here's a good, this is Tyler.
Okay.
I'm Tyler Hayden, by the way. I haven't talked quite yet. So I've been here for 9 years. This is I was hired in 2010, and that's part of the reason why I have another full-time job is because of that issue of I can't be counted upon to just keep my schedule open on the off chance that Hortonville offers me a shift this week. So that's why I'm a full-time paramedic and an ambulance in several different places.
And he
But-
saved some guy's life today. Outside
Awesome.
outside of the village, he went to assist.
Thank you,
I did.
Officer Hayden.
It was fun.
Yeah, he was P&B, pulseless non-breather. He was dead. They brought him back. I'm proud of him.
Thank you.
I'll remember to call when you're on duty.
Right? have the big heart attack when he's working.
I won't remember.
Absolutely. But what's kept me here for 9 years is the community. I've been here. I've dedicated 9 years of my career into this village, and it's because of the people I work with, not only, but it's also the community that I get to interact with and have the positive interactions. And the negative interactions it comes with the job. That's what my job is. Unfortunately, you're not going to get around that. But the positive interactions that we have with the community far outweighs the negative interactions. And the climate that we are in as a country with the hatred towards law enforcement, we don't see that here. And there might be a perception of it, but it's a false perception. Because the amount of people that shake my hand after a traffic stop that I just gave a warning or a ticket, you'd be surprised when people thank me for my service after I just gave them a ticket. You know, and I can't avoid the ticket because they were going 18 miles over the speed limit. You know, it's astounding that the amount of support that we have, that the community loves us. I get handshakes all the time, thank you for your service, everybody, all the time. But I still want to work full time. So I have another job, but I want to work full time here because the benefits that the village offers, the people and the community members. It's my 2 cents.
A little bit about me. My kids grew up here in Hortonville. I moved here in 1989. I started a family. I have 2 daughters who graduated from high school here. I lived here up until 2014. I loved this community. I lived on the south side of Black Otter. I had a wonderful neighborhood. If I could go back and buy my house all over again, I would most definitely do that. But then I took the chief's position in 2012 over in Shiocton, was a chief over there for 5 years, and then I was approached by the hiring firm that you guys had to go out and look for a chief. And I'm like, it's a great community. Why would I not think about coming back here? And I sat down, I talked with my husband, had a very deep conversation with him, and he's like, I'll support you in any way. I mean, I got some people telling me, are you crazy? You know, you're going to Hortonville because of, you know, some of the things that have happened here, you know? And I'm like, well, you know, but I love this community. And I think that people that are coming to this community, I can't see Hauser leaving here. He loves this community. He loves what he does. He loves to come to work every day. And I think that if your officers like what they're doing and the morale's good and they're treated decent, they're gonna stay here. And I think that's what you want. Hortonville was here, they were talking about retaining their teachers. They're working at retaining their teachers. And I think that if we work at retaining our people, that's gonna save us money in the end too, because we're not constantly hiring. And that's the big thing is the constant hire. Shiocton just hired a full-time. They were tired of, she said they went through 15 of them last year. That's a lot of people. And they're calling, and she just stopped over at my house and dropped off a bowl before I was on my way here. And she says, do you have any part-timers that you can give up? They can't fill their shifts because they can't find part-timers. That's scary.
So if I can understand, we're looking at, this is current budget. Okay.
Yes, to date.
To date.
Yep.
And we can clearly see that there's more than enough in that budget to support maintaining the staffing that we had
Absolutely.
We're not adding, no
No,
one's
it-
saying let's add 2 officers, anyone is, we're simply saying we lost a full-time, we move a part-timer up to that position, and then is your intention to hire a part-timer to fill that, or just, is that maybe
Part-time.
I would think that we would have to, in the future, hire a part-timer.
could that
because
part-time position wait until after the first of the year, but we fulfill that full-time position now?
It possibly could. It depends upon who gets put, it's all gonna wrench on who's gonna get that position, that full-time. So if one of these 3 of these part-timers get that position, okay, depending upon which one it is. And then we're gonna have to meet and we're gonna have to figure out how this is gonna look, okay? Cause we had a police and fire commission, and they basically, they recommend it to the chief figure, so, but we're gonna have to figure so I'm gonna use these 3, okay? And say for instance, he's not here, we pick Manders, okay? Manders gets a full-time spot. He's already out the door, cause he's close. Oneida's stealing him. It's just a matter of time before he gives me his notice, whether it be 2 weeks or it's gonna be 4 weeks. He's gonna be gone, so that leaves me with him who has a full-time job. Does that make sense? And I will not be able to cover that 2,000 some hours.
We've always had this problem with part-timers of trying to decide how many we should have and how many we shouldn't have, and there's never a happy number. And when we get down too low, that's when something bad happens,
If Sean
Tomorrow
gets
somebody
hurt,
could go out and damn near sever their finger with a log splitter, and now we gotta fill their shifts for the next
Yeah.
6 months while they're on light duty. And with no part-timers, how do we fill those shifts?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's the unknown, we don't know,
I deal with the
It's
same
like
thing. I
having
own my
a-
own business.
Yeah.
You never staff more than what you have to
Right.
have, and if something happens,
right? And
yeah,
it's
you're
like
in
a-
trouble.
But it's
That's
like
how it
an
works.
insurance policy, do I take full coverage out of my car and
Yeah.
I'm never gonna get hit a deer, and then I go down to liability, and what happens tomorrow, I hit a deer?
Yeah,
You know?
but in terms of budgets though, this is my first budgeting cycle, but the comments that I've heard for budgeting cycle is we are just saying no is what it feels like. That's what Kelly told me before. He says, look, when we get to the budgets, it feels like all we're doing is saying no to a lot. We're deciding what we're gonna say no to.
Our last 2 years of
So-
budgeting was like 15 minutes. It was like a 15-minute meeting because the department heads, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jeannie, but the department heads pretty much had everything laid out with at the time it was Russ Van Gompel, and it was everything balanced out. This was,
yeah.
Kelly Schleif years ago used to say, oh my God, make sure that you drink a lot of caffeine, because I've heard some of these budget meetings would go till 11, 12 at night. They would bring in food. I remember Lynn asking what we wanted. Remember that year we were asked what we wanted for food? I thought, what the heck do we need food for? The budget meetings the last couple of years have been, the department heads have really done their homework, and it's a formality that the board, so I hope you don't have the impression that we're gonna go line by line by line by line by line. If there's a question, absolutely go through the lines, but the department heads themselves, they're hired to do their job, and they do a damn good job of it. I think of last year, it was like 15 minutes. The year before, it was like 15 minutes. It
And
was,
as a
And-
department head, as a department head, I sit down, I start putting the numbers in here, and then I'm going to the village clerk, Jane, and I'm like, will you look at these? Am I out of line?
Mhm.
Where are we at? That conversation, would be with David and saying, because that's what I did with Russ. Russ pretty much filled in the blanks.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, because he knew what was there, what was available, and what we couldn't. And I don't know if that's why it went so smooth.
2
Carl
years
is a
Well,
huge
in a row.
asset.
Well, I can understand that our budgeting goes well, because if you talk to anybody, or if you look at my property tax bill every year, that's my money, that's the village residents' money. It's our job to try to spend that money like it's ours, and when I spend my money, I always try to figure out everything, okay, what are all my options and what can we do? And that's why we're here.
And
Right,
then-
we're not here to be enemies, we're not here to be on different sides, we're here to know, to try to learn what's the best
this
choice.
And that's,
This is
and
what
that's
we've
what I
always
do.
said to our
Yep.
department heads. We wanna know your needs, not your wants.
Right.
And so over the years, we've tried trimming the last few years to say, what exactly do you need? We don't want all this cushy, you know, and that's all we're saying, is if you have a lot left over at the end of the budget year, then for some reason, then we need to put that money somewhere else.
Absolutely.
You know, to another department or to this or that. So, you know, I mean, it's just a matter of
I have not,
being frugal.
and I have been so frugal this year, have I not? Have I? I've,
Is there another
So
department that
that's-
is lacking, that we need this money to put into another department? So everyone's right now good on their
It's not
budget.
that, Julie. What you're not factoring in is the costs associated. Now, we're gonna lose an average of about 6% from government for shared revenue. We've also used, fund balance, the last 3 seasons to balance the budget in excess of $100,000 up until last year, where it was $10,000. So it's getting better. But what you're not doing is you're not creating funds to fix. We are doing nothing
I was
preventative.
told we were getting $10,000 a month in interest that we were never getting before. So that's $120,000 a year.
However, 832,000 of that just went out to pay for Grandview Road expansion.
Which is a capital, it was part of the capital improvement
No,
plan,
it's
that
taken,
was,
no, that
that
was not
came out of-
accounted, that came out of savings.
okay?
Okay, so essentially what has happened in the years past, they've taken the squirrel and they put it away, they put it away, they put it away, they put it away. They didn't invest it, they didn't utilize it, they didn't use it. They took out loans for $30,000 squad car when they had $2.2 million in the bank. So they weren't aware of what was there. Those funds are being utilized properly now to pay for cash, minimize interest, and we're trying to reestablish fund balance in
I
order.
wish I would have known all of this prior to approving a large purchase we just made in the village for equipment. Not that that would have changed that decision, but I wish I would have known those specifics. When you're
Okay.
nailing all that down, I feel like, okay, now this is come to light, we've got all these possible shortages. But why weren't we told about that before we bought an excavator?
There are no shortage, there aren't a shortage.
Okay.
What we're trying to do is protect, what's there, okay?
Okay,
You have to look at it as a $54,000 excavator.
Yeah.
That's probably paid for itself half already in the
no
first month.
complaints, no complaints about excavator.
Because
I'm
every
just
time
saying-
we open up a hole for do a sewer and water repair, it's minimum $2,000.
Exactly.
We have an operator that can operate it, okay?
Oh,
So,
I love that we have an
Okay,
you
excavator.
know, we just paid
Instead of
$1,500
being
for, we
outside.
just paid $1,500 for a functioning street sweeper. We pay $12,000 a year to have our street sweep 4 times. That's the investments we're making because we've never looked at it that way. So when we do a capital expenditure, like a snowplow or a 12-foot pusher, we're gonna reduce the plowing by 20% of our time. So that'll pay for, I always have a return of
But
investment.
investing in, okay, let's look at it the investment way, and maybe I need to be schooled on this, but I feel like if we fill a position that's been vacated, and we maybe don't fill that part-time position right away, we're investing because we're not spending $7,100 for every part-timer we churn through here. I feel like that, to me, is what gets me. And that's what I want to say, you know what, Chris, go ahead and hire this full-time position, and maybe we just hold off on the part-time, and we maybe bump some of the part-timers up, or you fluctuate that in the schedule, and we reevaluate this. We have more frequent public safety meetings. Maybe we keep our nose in but our hands off, so to speak. Which is our role, is to keep our nose in and our hands off. But I feel like that's an investment too.
I'm not just disagreeing with you
I
at all.
know, but
I'm
I
not.
feel like, how are we okay with spending over $7,000 training someone, and we know that if we lose a part-timer, and we're gonna have to hire a part-timer, there's another $7,100, and then we're gonna probably lose that part-timer, there's another we're just constantly paying this money out, we're bleeding that money, and what's the investment, what's the payback for the village? As a taxpayer, those are the kind of comments that I get. Why do we have such turnover? It's not that we have a high turnover, it's we have a high part-time turnover. And so there have people that have contacted me that listened to that meeting, that listened to the $7,000 that it cost. I've had people upset at the fact that why are we paying that amount of money to knowing that somebody's probably just gonna leave? Because we know that's typical with part-timers. I feel comfortable saying, you know what, with this kind of budget, and I understand that there's things changing with health insurance and whatnot, And maybe we look at the next time we renegotiate the union contract, some kind of incentive to help keep that full-timer here longer.
But I think we also look at, as far as what we can do with that $7,700 too. Have Brian give Shawano a call, I call Wapaka, and find out how they're legally doing this
With their union.
with their union, right? You know, unfortunately, we can't do anything because part-timers aren't in the union. So we can't do anything to a part-timer by making them, or maybe we can. But I think it's the phone calls to them to figure out how we can. I am gonna tell you, I am the first to be frugal. I treat this budget like it is my money coming out of my pocket. I probably should have had a squad car at the beginning of this year. I don't know, I mean, we've been kind of talking, we've been kind of doing like maybe options, you know?
2021.
Do we go with a pickup truck so that we can, you know, hand it down to the DPW? Or, I mean, there's different options out there, and we think about all of them as a police agency because we are under, I mean,
Everybody is.
right.
Yeah.
Because
I
it-
will
That's our
give them
job.
that.
That's our
The operating budgets are dialed in.
Yeah.
Every department head has dialed in their operating budgets. There is no excess here.
Good.
It's all the extras that are kicking our
Mhm.
backsides right
And every
now.
year it happens.
So that's why it came to a head here. And how I'll defend the public works side of it is because we took on a person that was already here 3 years again, so no different than the part-timers for PD. We reduced wage by $1 an hour, and we reduced benefits. Because there was a different benefit. So we looked at what we currently had to what we were gonna get, it went down. It
Which
went
is
down.
Essentially what would happen if we took a part-timer, moved into full-time, but did not replace that part-time position.
Correct.
Essentially, we'd be doing the exact same thing.
There's a significant drop though. You're talking not $1, you're talking $6 or $7 per hour, and you can buy some time. Now, unfortunately, like the guys had said, if there was a plethora of part-time help, this would be a no-brainer. It'd be a no-brainer.
Yeah,
People would be
yeah,
looking to
you're
work.
right.
That's what we gotta factor in. And again, this isn't me versus Chris or
No,
me
it's
against, we just had to take a look at it. So when everybody got upset and realized, hey, you know, you know,
Let's back up about, everybody can set, this is business. and-
Exactly.
And it's the best crash course, I think, for the board members to get up to speed. I hate to say it, we're behind guys on knowing everything you do, and that's
But
always the way it's gonna
And
be.
this is good going
But-
into future public
but,
safety meetings.
but
I
I
mean, you
mean-
know exactly what we're all about.
Yeah, but I mean, this is the best growing pains we can have, the best indoctrination, everybody gets to know about it, and it's not a bad thing that people butt heads to think what they really need. Chris, you've been here a little over a year. I mean, do you see any areas that there are cost savings in your department that you took over?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Just the vehicle maintenance, I think
I
that was a
don't
big
think
deal,
so.
the training.
I honestly, Dan, what she came in front of the board last year was basically to replenish something that was so depleted. I mean, what they did to get what they needed is because they didn't have it. So,
Mhm.
I mean, now,
We did.
You didn't.
We were
I mean,
lucky
they
if we
didn't
had
have
a box or
ammunition.
two of ammo.
They
I
didn't
know,
have-
I was
yeah.
just gonna say that.
They didn't.
We didn't have any ammo.
Yeah.
The
So-
computers that we're working on, Sean did all the IT before
Yeah.
I came in. Because the chief prior to me didn't want anything to do with it. So Sean did it. Sean's got, on our MDCs and our squad cars, it's like a generic form of Windows 10. We kid you not, we're in the middle of our shift and it says, our CAD screen goes down, our CAD screen is our dispatch, right? That tells us where to go and what we're going to, and you got a person with a gun or a whack job, doing something, So anyways, that's probably not. But so, all of a sudden, it goes black and it starts spinning. It's restarting. Now you're driving down the road and dispatch is sending you updates and you're not getting them. That's a huge officer safety issue. So some of the things that we probably want to do is put, something with the Windows 10, a real version of it or
The
something.
software, you need
This-
the actual
We
software,
need,
right?
we need the
John?
actual
We
software.
need it village-wide. I mean, that's
Yeah.
something that we have to, but there's bigger things, you know, we're looking at reassessment service, we're looking at ordinance
Right.
modification.
I know.
20 years of things that haven't been done.
Yes.
The list keeps piling up, so.
Huh?
on-
Public safety though, I think that scares me. You know, even to say we're gonna be covered by county for X amount of hours per day,
Okay.
I've seen it. I was a first responder. I've been in the situations in Greenville, and guess who showed up? The SRO.
But let me tell
Not
you,
one county officer showed up.
I live in a jurisdiction where we have part-time. Kinda like Black
Part-time
Creek.
coverage.
Yep, like
Okay.
Black Creek's got. People know when the cops are there. Here's a little secret when I was in Shiacton. Is this being recorded? Because everybody's
Yes.
gonna know
Yes,
the
it is.
secret.
There you go.
Here we go. So here we go. So when I got hired there, Shiacton was very good to their employees. Butch left after 41 years. He had a huge payout and everything else. But then I worked for Shiacton for 18 years as a part-timer. And I worked full-time at the sheriff's department for 18 years. And if people at the sheriff's department would say to me, why are you hanging on? And I go, someday I'm gonna be chief. Okay, so Butch said to me, they gave me a squad car to drive back and forth from Shiacton to Hortonville because he wanted that squad car moving. Every time I would go to the gas station, or if I'd go to the River Rail for a board meeting, or wherever, I had a marked car, and I'd go to the range. I'd go out to the garden. I'd go to my mother-in-law's and father-in-law's. I'd go to Sarah's house, a friend of mine.
Looks
I
like more
was
coverage.
Visibility, yeah.
that
looks like
car
coverage,
was
yeah.
all over the place at all times of the day. I left. The chief lives in Freedom. The cars are stuck in a garage. They get out 8 to 6 hours per day. Everybody knows when there's not a cop working. There's like crap going on because people know that there's nobody working. There's break-ins. There's drunk people moving into the Broad Street apartments. There's so much more crime that's going on because they know when the officers are working and when they're not. So I don't feel the safety that I felt when I was a chief there. I mean, we had more coverage. I don't know why she's not covering it as much. I think it was because she couldn't find the part-timers. I know that when one of the part-timers had quit, she ended up working weekends. That got really old with her. They kept going through these part-timers like you would not believe it, and that's why they made Sarah Knapp a full-timer.
So, have you investigated like any alternatives to what you're doing right now? Because I mean, some of the chiefs I talked to said they just got fed up with part-time. They have no part-times left, unless they have an SRO. That's a part-time SRO. Otherwise, every other officer is full-time. They maintain their budget back to what they would have if they had the part-time, plus then they account for the cost and the training. But then they make the schedule work somehow, or they have, a gap. A floating gap that the public doesn't know what it is, from 2 to 4, from 3 to 6, or from 8 to 10 in the morning, or whatever it is. But they have a gap, and they have just full-time officers. That's it.
Sure.
Have you looked into what your differences would be at all? I mean, because I hear a lot of part-time cost, part-time turnover, part-time cost, part-time turnover.
Well,
I
I brought that up to him, and I'm like, the ideal thing would be to hire 2 full-timers. Is it feasible? Probably not. But on the other hand,
But you would have to do a comparison to, okay, this is what I'm paying for the part-time plus what I'm paying for my estimated rotation of training, right? So this is what I could afford, and maybe that's not 2 full-time officers, but you have to include all your expenses, including benefits and everything else. So,
Yep.
I mean, maybe that comes out to 1.5,
Yep.
right, or 1.2, or something like that. But it's worth investigating,
Well,
and then you don't have to be
right.
in this situation.
in the second, if you would hire a second full-timer, you would have like the full-timer that you hired to fill Kazuski's spot. Okay, then you would have a second full-timer, and that full-timer, you would bring him on not to what the contract says, the 3 on 2 off, 2 on 3 off. and some of the agencies have that, where they're on a, like a floating system. So he may work, 2 to 10, one shift, he may work 7 to 3 a next shift, he may work 6 to 2 or whatever. Hauser's schedule is that way. Hauser's all over the place. One day he's working 4 hours, the next day he's working 6 hours, but then once school lets out, then he's back to that.
But, well, I mean, my thought with that is, if you were to look at it and do all the numbers, and it came out to say it was 1.3, right? It would be 1.3 full-time officers. Well, you could probably shoot everything, get the one full-time officer, you cover the 0.3 in patrol, just build it in as part of your schedule, and then you're done. Then the only part-time you have is an SRO that's part-time. And then you still have that potential that you can call up and add to your, if you need, I mean, on an emergency style basis, you still have somebody available that would have hours.
Yeah. And a 0.3 for me would be almost 700 hours a year.
I talked to a chief who works 50% of his,
I understand that, but the chiefs that you're talking about also have 16 years at that department. I'm a new chief.
Yeah.
I have policies and procedures that are dating back to 1989. We are a lawsuit waiting to happen.
Okay.
We are. And for me to dig in and update those policies, I mean, legally, you should be looking at those every year. I never had time to look at them last year. It's because I'm in the hiring. When I'm going through hiring somebody, I still don't have Andrew totally out of the system. I gotta put all these people into the system, I gotta take them out of the system. I mean, there is a lot of work with them, but there's things that, I take on most of the workload so that these guys can be out pounding the streets and doing whatever they're supposed to be doing out there, protecting the public, whether it be traffic stops or answering 911 calls or anything like that.
But to add to that, you're out there.
I
I
am out
see
there.
you out there.
I'm out
I mean-
every morning. I am out there. I'm at the school. Today I was at Nash by the crossing guard. Yesterday I was at the elementary. I mean,
But
I'm knocking on doors
in
for
a general
orders.
sense, you're not scheduled as a patrol
Right.
officer. That's what I'm saying.
most of the chiefs are not.
You're right, most of them are
Most
not.
of them are not.
But the majority of them are not, but there's a very large
I
percentage of them that seem to be, they have a percent, when someone gave me, they're like, look, I put myself on for 5% of the schedule, I'm on the patrol schedule. I mean, it was probably somewhere between 35 and 40% of the chiefs that I talked to have themselves on the
Yep.
patrol schedule for some degree or another.
and I mean, I gotta be in at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning and work until 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. And so I have, by the end of this week, I'll have 36 hours of patrolling out of my 40-hour week.
And that's because you're covering for the
'Cause
shortages.
I'm covering,
Yes.
but I'm getting sick. So yesterday I had a sore throat. Today I'm starting to get hoarse now, but what happens if I have to call in on Friday? I don't have anybody to cover the shift. is
Then
where-
what happens then?
Huh?
What happens then?
Well, I'm gonna have to either call in a full-timer and pay him time and a half,
You said either, so either that or what else?
or find a part-timer.
Okay.
So where I'm going with this is I'm spent for this week. I have a lot going on with the meetings. I have another meeting tomorrow night. We have a board meeting on Thursday. It's getting to be an awful lot. But I spend as much time as I can out on the roads, and I did. Today I ended up talking to a couple people on ordinance violations because there's a couch laying out on Nash Street. I was out with the railroad company a couple times today, so I had a meeting in Appleton. I think I spend my fair share of time out there with doing what I can do. But that's what the other chiefs are doing. I'm doing exactly what the other chiefs are doing. If somebody takes a vacation,
That was, the ones who don't,
Yep.
their administrative chiefs, pretty much all of them said the same thing. They said, I go out, but it's to cover if somebody is sick or somebody's on vacation, I'll go out on patrol. But I don't schedule myself out for patrol.
Right.
But about 35 to 40% of them schedule themselves sometime for
some of
patrol.
them do, and they have like years on that department. Some of them have 6, 7, 8 years as the chief in those departments.
Okay. I don't understand the relevance to how
Because-
long they were there.
Because they can. They say that it takes a chief an average of 5 years to get his department or her department in line.
Okay.
Because you have the policies and procedures that need to be updated. You have different things that you're working on within your department, you know, whether it be the IT. I spent a lot of time last year all on the computer stuff because everything was going to heck on us. You know, we had laptops that, or not laptops, computer systems that were failing. They wouldn't start, they were running slow. We spent an awful lot on IT last year. This year we don't have that. I'm hoping that next year I can start working on the policies and procedures. We talked about the ordinances with recodifications and stuff like that, because we have ordinances that just are not up to par. They're not comparable with other agencies. Our noise ordinance, which I'm hoping that we can get a meeting together for that, is, it says, if it's annoying. What's annoying?
So,
Okay?
don't get me wrong, I don't think anybody here wants to micromanage your time.
Right.
But if I don't throw out the possibility, then I don't understand what your reasoning for not doing it is.
Right.
Right, so that, don't take it the wrong way.
Okay.
I
take it as you're telling me I'm not out
No,
there, and
no,
I'm
no,
out
this
there.
is, our job is to
Okay.
watch the money, right? And if you being a part-time patrol officer would affect the budget in a way that it's beneficial to the rest of the village, and we could take some money somewhere else, or reduce people's taxes, gee, God forbid, then that's a plus for us, that's our job.
Right.
Okay, it's
I
not me
get
trying
it.
to attack you, it's not me trying to say you should do this, right? I'm asking the question.
Right.
Right?
I've actually heard from both of you, about, you know, get out there more. And you said that to
Only
me.
because the people like to see you. Only because
but I got a
they
job-
wanna
I
know
got
their
an
chief.
administrative
And
too.
I've heard things that, you know, we don't know the chief, or we don't, you know, and I say, well, I don't know, so that's why I ask you. Do you go out patrolling? Are you out there? When you're out at the school, people love it. They love it, because then people behave. You know, they aren't parking where they shouldn't be, and they aren't, so then you hear the positive.
Right.
Saturday at the Dash Down Nash, I can't even tell you the people that commended the fire department, the police department, the EMS in this town. I can't even tell you, but you were out there. And that's all we're trying to say is, get your face out there. Every one of you officers, get your face out there. People want to know you. Kids, a couple kids were kind of like afraid of you, you know. Saturday, you gotta get kids over being afraid of police. Maybe their parents threaten them. I don't know. You know, like, if you don't behave, I'm gonna call the police. But people want to know our officers. They
Yeah.
want to.
We have
That's all
children
I'm
coming
saying.
through, we have children coming through our police department all the time.
We
Yeah.
want your faces out there. We want people to know who the chief in this town is. You know, that's just something. So we ask, are you out there? I mean, it's not a mean question. It's a, we want you to be known, you know.
And I think we can all agree, you're very visible, a lot more visible than I'd ever seen in the past. And any of these officers, I see you guys out there. But I also live in one of those, I live where you're saying, Main and Nash. I live in one of those really visible spots. And I do see, and, you know, we hear, and it is not a quiet corner. You guys are busy. You know, you do your job. The traffic stops, yeah, that's important, because some of these folks going through, I've seen, what was it? There was a stolen vehicle one time that there was a stop. I can't remember who was on that night. Sean, you know, you woke me up that night with your loudspeaker. But
Remember that?
Oh.
At the gas station?
yeah, so I mean, I think you guys are doing great. But what do we do so tonight, we are the Public Safety Committee. We don't have the authority, the full board would have an authority to say a hiring freeze, the full board. I don't think a hiring freeze is the solution. I think we need to look at this particular situation tonight, and this situation says We have a full-time officer that left. We want to bump up a part-time officer, or potentially bump up a part-time officer. Maybe we don't fill that part-time position quite yet until 2020. Is that something that, I don't think it's not crazy. I think it's a very viable idea, and if we get into April and May and holy cats, something's really bad with the budget, I'd love my taxes to go down. But if that meant that there wasn't gonna be police coverage here for certain hours of the day, nope, I will pay the taxes to cover it, because I know the call times are insane. If you think of that, what do you call them, sections?
Mm-hmm.
So from all the way from Dale, all the way up to basically 47 and S, that's freedom. Do you know what the call time could be on that versus, I called a non-emergent call the other day, there was an accident in front of our house. I don't even know what the call time on that was. I would say under 2 minutes. There was an officer there. Had that been out of Gimme County, you would have had a state highway with debris on the road and no officer there potentially for as long as it took from somebody to get from 47 to S. And I think we'd be taking away public safety. Jim, I can't imagine anyone in your neighborhood would want to say, well, we have some new development and some people aren't real happy with the new development. We're going to go ahead and shave off a police shift. I don't think that's going to fly. I don't think it should fly in this community. I think we have the proof that we're growing. We have the proof that the school district is growing. I get it. Insurance benefits. I ran a business. I know how horrible insurance benefits are. I've paid them. I ran a business too. But I think we need to look at public safety, and bottom line, this is public safety. And I think if the solution is to just go a few hours a day without an officer on duty, I'm not okay with that. And I don't think that the residents as a whole would be okay with that. I just don't think it would be. I think at this point, this group makes a recommendation to the board, but we don't have to make a recommendation. This is already an approved position.
You would need to do an update to the village board on the committee report.
An update.
That'd be Jim's responsibility, and advice.
But it's already an approved position, so it's not even, there's no motion needed.
Nope, just
There's
a recommendation,
nothing.
just a
It's
recommendation for her to move forward with what you feel is the
Move
best.
forward with the caveat that part-time position, and I understand it could depend on who you hire, would drastically change, but you also have some part-timers that maybe would take some more hours to help cover that, or in the interim, I know you've been covering patrol a lot. Maybe in that interim, you still have that full-timer coming on, and you're short a part-timer, and maybe that does mean you just spend a little bit of time that you're worked into that patrol schedule to cover that until we really get into the nuts and bolts of 2020. We get into that first quarter of 2020 and we realize, I think we're okay. I think we're just fine. We move forward. And I understand the housing boom and all that stuff. Well, those things don't happen overnight. And I think that there is something happening in the economy that could change things drastically. But public safety in a growing community, to me, I just don't think we should shave at this point. We should just maintain what we currently we're approved for.
Everybody understands that public safety is important,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's necessary. I mean, you have to have it. But our job is to decide how much money to spend on it, right? That's our job.
As a full board,
As
not
a
as
full-
you and
yes.
you
No,
in
I-
little tiny discussions.
No,
Full board. The full board would
The
have
f-
access to this, which is the first time I've seen.
yes.
This number, Jim.
The full board isn't gonna sit in on this every time.
No,
I mean,
but
Pat
we
was
have
here,
the
so
money.
that's what we're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
okay? So I understand the responsibility of the full board to approve the budget, right? But we are here to look at and try to weigh in the options that we have, right? So we can make recommendations to the full board.
At budget time for the 2020 budget, this is an approved budget. I was
Yes.
on that board.
Yes. Okay, so I have a question. Who reports to who and how does it work here, right? Who do you report to? Who has oversight for you?
I report to him.
Okay, so if you want to hire somebody, do you have to let David know?
In the past, what we did was we hired somebody and then we informed him that we had a vacancy. Brian, this is more you.
Well, we've had some changes because we don't have a police and fire commission anymore.
Okay.
So that's important to know because
Yes.
in the past, we've had a police and fire commission that we've gone to. We've always looped the administrator into that conversation and said, we have a vacant position, we're looking to hire, and then we use our police and fire commission in that process of hiring. I will say that, in 15 years, this issue this has not been this fashion. We've not gone and asked for a position that was opened up mid-budget and then taken that back to a board to discuss whether we fill or don't fill that position. So I would say this part of the process isn't it.
Okay, that's
So
fine,
then-
but it's still our responsibility. And I'm
Right.
not, we're not trying to be mean to anybody or overly critical, but it's
Yes.
our responsibility to look at what's going on.
Yep.
And the only way we can do that is if we understand. So in the absence of the Police and Fire Commission, you have no oversight for hiring. You're just notifying David. Is that what I
So
understand?
who interviews,
Yeah,
Brian?
so then after we did hire a full-timer Police and Fire Commission, and how that was handled is I went to the administrator and said I have a vacant position, we need to fill that position. The interview committee was myself, Peter O, who was the chair of public safety at the time, and the previous administrator. So jointly, we made that decision on who to hire for full-time.
But that was in
So
the
there's-
absence of a chief.
There's no
Correct.
policy? We don't have a policy of,
We did not develop a policy after, Nathan can probably fill you in, after our Police and Fire Commission abolished, we never developed a policy as a board as to how we were gonna handle these situations.
do you think that's something we need to do?
Absolutely.
Establish,
It is,
Yeah.
it was recodified in the ordinances that I sent to you, so it's section 1-11. It does give the oversight and authority. Now, there is also hiring and order of general government in there. I did not give that to you, but there,
Is that in the ordinance book here? 'Cause I don't have that. Who'd you send that to?
fresh.
that's fresh? Okay.
You sent that
So,
to me?
one dash one
I
one.
asked,
Okay.
I asked what happened after police and fire was banned, and I couldn't remember who was next in line. So I asked him to send me,
1-11, Julie.
One
Yeah.
dash
I
one,
think
village
it's like-
administrator?
Q.
And Jeannie, if you recall, after we abolished the Police and Fire Commission, we had some discussion, Sorensen drafted, I think, an ordinance that spoke to disciplinary hearings and having review
Mhm.
examiners, and we could select from, I think there was three of them, David, that
Yep.
are in that book.
Yep.
But then we never really addressed that issue on the hiring side. So how we dealt with that is pulled the public safety chair, pulled the administrator, and then I was OIC at that time, so the three of us made that decision, but that still needs to be addressed on what that.
And I think that would be consistent if Jim and I and Chris would handle the hiring. I mean, I think that'd be a fair means of it, correct?
I think, and the reason why Brian was involved at the time is you were officer in charge.
Correct.
You were
Yeah.
officer,
Correct.
that's why Brian was pulled in.
Yep.
Just to give you some background on that, Jim,
Okay.
because that's why Brian was used, because he was the officer in
Yes,
charge.
I got that. I see, I got that one, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I
That's
got that one right
another-
away.
That's another acronym,
Yeah.
and I'm like, we just gotta make sure. I'm trying to find that.
I was in the
ordinance.
military, so I know a lot,
Okay, that
we
one.
used a lot of acronyms, so I can figure most of them out.
do you think we should, so then going forward, we should establish that? So that we do have,
And that's what I said in the beginning, because if we do hire somebody, we move a full-timer to a part-timer, or a part-timer to a full-time position, we don't really have anything in place. And that's why I had called you to ask
Yeah.
you,
And that's
Where-
part of how we
where
ended
do
up where
we
we are right
go?
now. Is because
Yeah.
there's nothing in place, and then you
No.
have three new people that are on the
I
public
talked to
safety
5
here
different
that are
people
like, well,
trying
what
to
the heck?
figure
is-
this
you
out
know?
without I was on board a long time ago. The Police and Fire Review Committee was back at the time of Doug Jones.
Sure.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
it was everything, so I've been asking other people, but
and I know
talked to
that,
somebody from Appleton, Appleton Police Chief, talks, his boss is the mayor.
Sure.
You know,
So
I worked in the highway department. Of course, I got the county executive, I got the highway commissioner, and they could all put stops on hiring until they felt the need. You know, so some of this wasn't big news to me when we go back and forth for budget and what the right time to hire somebody is. A little bit different what I was doing to what the police department is. But trying to find the table order here, that, I said, who reports to who?
Mhm.
Yeah,
You
Yeah.
report, in
And I
essence, you report to
and I
David,
guess I
David
asked you
reports
a
to the
couple times
board.
too.
Yeah.
so when you guys, you've been here for quite some time, is that what the train of thought was? I mean, the chain was, who interviewed you guys?
For me,
Yeah, any of you that
Yeah,
were
police and
here.
fire commission,
It
so,
was-
and
it
the
was a
chief.
police
Yeah.
and fire commission.
Okay.
And we don't have that anymore,
Yeah,
so that doesn't even play
because
into
we
it.
don't have it.
It wasn't even that.
We
for
should
both.
Already
establish.
get into that territory.
And that's
Some
changed
rules.
3-4 times over the past 10 years too. When I started working
Yes,
here,
and
it was the PFC and Chief Sullivan that
not
did the interview, and
productive.
then they all made a decision, and then after a while, then we did like, the full-timers would interview the candidates,
We have different
and then
processes.
but then there'd be 2 levels, the full-timers interview the candidates, and then the chief and the PFC would interview the ones that we selected and put forward, and then they would make the decision on who to hire.
But I think if you
And
have
that-
a police and fire commission under 6213, your police and fire commission is your hiring authority, is your disciplinary authority. Because we don't have a police and fire commission, those 6213 rules don't apply, so we have to reestablish what those rules are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we should
That
do
that
that.
would be my
Yeah.
impression of
We
that.
kind of established how we would handle disciplinary.
Yes.
But we didn't
But-
handle,
Correct.
we didn't address how we handle the
It
hiring,
refers to
and
the
that's what we need
personnel
to figure
manual.
out.
And that's why I
Yeah.
asked David, I said, well, what is the protocol here for hiring? I, because I don't recall what all
There
happened when
isn't.
we disbanded the police and fire. Like you said, I remember the discipline part of
We
it.
addressed that, we
And
just didn't
I
address the
didn't know
hiring.
if we had done something else.
I'll be the first to
know.
say it, our bad. The board should have done that, we just
Yeah,
didn't do that.
should have been
Our
done.
bad, let's
Yeah.
just move forward so we
So
can do
now-
something.
Yeah.
And with
Because I
the,
feel
with the
like we're-
part-timers, Brian and I and the FTO, which was Kazuski, were doing the interviewing and then sitting down and saying, what do you think of this one, and then we would bring them back, we brought them back for another interview, and then at that point, then we offered them a position if they passed, drug test, whatever. So,
But totally different, part-time versus full-time, so,
yeah.
yeah. But I'd be looking for a table of order and, to be set up or explained to us as a board, with the review of officers and on it.
Yeah, I think it should be on a future board meeting to get this
It
established.
covers the front end of it, we've already covered the back end of it,
Yeah.
the disciplinary, I think, and that is our bad as a board. I guess we weren't thinking outside the box, we were thinking
Oh.
that box of the disciplinary
Too
part of
many
it.
things happen at once.
And I
It
didn't
was
really have to
just,
think about it
No.
until now.
Yeah.
But for tonight's sake, so we can move forward, I mean, we've been here a long time. We're not making any motions, we're not doing that tonight because that's not our role. But you need some kind of direction, and for us to meet again in 2 weeks, just to do the same thing, these numbers are not gonna change in 2 weeks. It's just gonna have more calls from 2 weeks of September calls. You all know my opinion on it, but Sean, are you still there?
Shauna?
Yeah, I'm here.
All of a sudden, there she is. Sorry, Shauna, we should have been
Does
asking
Shauna
her.
have anything to say?
Yeah. I know, kind of prefer it.
I'm hungry.
Aw.
Me too.
I had pizza. I definitely think we need to set up some sort of process for.
I don't think we're gonna solve anything right now,
I
to
mean,
be honest. I think
that needs to go in front of the
I don't
full
know.
board to set something up. So we don't end up in this situation again, because we're in a situation where you're the chief, you're the department head, you have money in your budget, you have a position that gets opened up, and then you have somebody that de facto you're reporting to that's saying, well, put the brakes on, hang on a second, let's talk to the board, let's talk to the safety committee. But you don't have any directive saying what you're supposed to do in this position.
No.
I had an extended conversation with one of the chiefs I talked to, and I don't know how it came up, but he said something about, because we got all the way to the point where we were talking about hiring somebody, and he says, well, how do you normally handle hiring? I said, well, usually I find out because the police department posted something up on Facebook when they swear them in. And he's like, you're the chair of the public safety, and that's how you find out that they hired somebody, is because they posted it on Facebook? I said, yeah, that's how I find out. Guy almost fell off his chair.
Every department does it differently.
Yeah.
And every board does it differently. So
We-
if you look at our historical,
Yeah.
the Public Safety Committee has not been a regular committee. Maybe it needs to be, maybe from this point forward, okay, now we've been schooled, we should meet more frequently. But historically,
No.
this committee has not been
Yeah.
on,
No.
yeah.
And Black Creek, same way, they report to the village board that they hired somebody. Same thing with Shiacton. I would just go and hire somebody. Butch, who was on the village board, he's like, she's the department head, why are we micromanaging her? She knows how to hire people, let her hire people, and she'll just report to us who she hired and how many she hired.
And maybe that's what the full board will decide.
Right.
But we need to have a definitive, and we're gonna be.
I would prefer that it's not a one-time thing. We need the table of order and a process so that we don't go through this
I
every
mean,
time.
we have more than
Every
24
time.
hours. Can we add that to the agenda for Thursday?
I don't think we'd have time to do diligence on it.
Okay.
I wanna look at
So
it.
can we add it as a discussion point for the board?
I think we'd be better off pushing it to another meeting.
Okay.
But that pushes it on another month.
I think we need to make a decision on we know what we need to do. This is different. I think
Yeah.
it's not gonna affect this decision. I think for the time being, if you give her the go-ahead or a recommendation to hire somebody, it should go to Jim, myself, and Chris for this time being. Then we establish the protocol. It's gonna take time. This isn't something you can write in a day, a week, or a month. It's gonna be some research on it.
Exactly, and it should go through legal and obviously.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah,
are we
absolutely.
saying tonight that the recommendation of this committee is that we do go forward with this and the interview committee or interview ad hoc, we should say, is going to be Jim, Chief, and yourself? But we know that we're moving forward. We're not
Correct.
just
Correct.
treading water here.
And again, I would support a full-time or staffing a part-time. And I'm challenged with putting a budget together, and like you said earlier, Julie, if Andrew had not quit, we wouldn't be here. Okay, so we have budget to support it. That's not the issue. We just needed to do a deep look, moving into the future to see what our options were, and if it was the best move for the village moving forward, okay?
Well, and with that, with Andrew leaving, and what was he at, 28?
28.
Okay.
Correct.
A new full-timer coming in is at 21. So
Yeah.
even if there was money there to cover Andrew, and there was money there to cover him, we're okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're okay. Okay.
Absolutely. We just gotta address it, and I addressed it at the department head level with meetings, and I said, we need to do this for good governance.
Mhm.
We need to take a look at this.
And that's
Every
your
time.
job, and that's what we hired you to do, and I
Absolutely.
love that you're all into that. I just think this time around, I wish I would have gotten more of the material ahead of time. Like, I know there was, like, the SRO contract, I would have loved to have seen that. Now if I attend a school board meeting, that's something that it's a little different.
I'm not knocking that and those two contracts were all approved at village board.
I
So-
don't recall
But
seeing
I
it.
don't know that we were given them,
No.
because I don't have a copy.
Okay,
And-
well, you're gonna tomorrow.
So as a rule of thumb, if you're sending two committee members the information, just send it to all of us.
We have-
That would be helpful.
We have a personnel manual that everyone should know about. We should also have the union contract that every
Personnel
board
manual.
member should have. We
here.
shouldn't be hiding anything from anyone,
No.
because we all need to be educated.
But
And
and
if
it
we're
was-
not educated,
Yeah.
we're in trouble.
And, and it's not hiding it from you.
Yeah.
And I think, like, when the contract came out for the union contract, you weren't here, so neither one of you would have that.
Russ
But-
and Peter were
and-
part of that process, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. So
Just
maybe,
a few.
maybe that's something
Yeah.
that we,
I'd like a copy.
when new trustees come on, that they're getting that information.
And this is the first time I saw the SRO contract. It's like, come on, this needs to be shared with our board.
And I don't even, to be honest with you, I don't even have it.
We need
Did you,
it.
did you get a copy of it yet? The signed copy?
Everyone
Okay.
should have it to be able to
Yeah.
see it. I
Well,
mean, otherwise,
Or accessible at the website level or something.
Something, I just, like, I would rather get 5 or 6 emails and maybe I just tuck 4 of them away in folders for later than to get one email and then not have the other 4 that could have maybe answered some questions I had. So just for future reference, I would prefer to get inundated with emails and use folders than to put it, to be in a meeting and not be prepared.
and I think the SRO contract needs to come to our board before it gets approved by the school. Because it's going to the school, we're never seeing it. It's like, what? You know, why are we not seeing this?
I just followed what they
Brian,
did.
how come that never got shared with the board?
I guess I don't have an answer for that this year. I can tell you that, the process of that is that the board asks for RFP, we provide the proposal, they decide on it as a board, and if they choose to go with us for services, they sign it, it comes to this side, and I even believe that, and I thought it was even beyond the village administrator, I thought village president and village administrator signed that, that's why I'm not sure on the signature
That would've
page
been
there. I'm not sure, is there a village president? I don't.
Myself and Todd Tim.
Okay, so it is
So-
just the two administrators, so
You know, should you even bring it to the public safety before it's presented to their board over there? I mean, just to, you know, just like anything else, to
Does
just.
theirs go through a subcommittee first?
Correct.
Right, theirs goes through a subcommittee. It would be, and I agree with you here, Jeannie, that maybe, because I had never seen the SRO contract, and not that we are altering it, but at least to have that knowledge. Because I think, and even anybody new coming onto public
I agree.
safety.
See, I would prefer it would not go to the committee, it should go to all the board members.
Exactly.
And then that way, if something's a red flag or somebody
Mm-hmm.
needs something
Oh, I
clarified,
see
it
it.
could be
Yeah.
brought up at a committee meeting.
Yeah.
Even a
And
better
hopefully-
point, thank you,
And hopefully
Yeah.
committee meeting rather than board.
thank you, even a better point.
Yeah.
Because we're all representing this community, not just the
Right.
committee. And I guess I went with subcommittee there because I knew the school board had like a
personnel, I think.
personnel committee is what it went through first, and then it goes through the full board, yeah.
Yeah, but we all need to see.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'd rather get inundated with emails.
2021.
I'm volunteering to have a full email box, but I'd rather just file it away in an electronic folder, and then I can reference it.
We can do that.
I think I just,
Okay, so,
all right.
Well,
All right,
here we go.
so,
Hey, Sean, are you there?
You gotta be hooting the movie hall.
so I want to thank everybody for all the information. And I hope nobody is, you know, put off, because like I started with this, it's our job to ask the questions. Because if I don't ask the questions, nobody asks the questions, well, what about this? Or can we do this? Or what would happen with this? There's no way that we know. Okay.
Like Dan said, this was educational.
Yes, it was very educational. I appreciate everybody's input.
Mhm.
We have some stuff to,
Now we just gotta get you on a ride along.
But you gotta sit in the back.
oh,
I already did that.
That's what my 12-year-old
been a
was
long
told.
time since I
If you
sat
get
in
a
the
ride
back.
along, you had to sit in the back.
Right?
Anyone do
yeah.
it.
So, moving forward, what are we doing right now? Is it the makeshift three of us to continue this, or what?
To continue a
Okay.
hire, not,
To continue just with
It
the,
would be the three of us if we went into a hiring
okay,
process. It's gonna be the four of you deciding on, and Shauna, deciding on next steps moving forward, a recommendation to the village board.
okay,
And it doesn't have to be more than a committee report on Thursday.
okay.
so is that the recommendation we're
So,
making on Thursday?
I
or-
think we should make two recommendations to the board, one to the full board. One is that we move forward with a temporary placement because of the deficiency in that was created when the fire, or the police and fire commission was dissolved. That we move forward with the temporary placement of myself, the village administrator, and Chris. And that we move forward with the adoption, the development and adoption of the procedures for future hiring, advancements, and placements, and potentially you could add in some other oversight in there as well, like the future, the initial review of the SRO contract could go through that. Well, it's presented to the whole board, but those three people could sit there and nitpick away at it. You know, there are other things that could go in under the umbrella of those personnel that end up there. I
So-
think those two recommendations,
To add, just so I can clarify on that first one, when you say that like a temporary, like ad hoc.
just for this current position.
So
this
we're
current hire.
doing we're maintaining the services, or maintaining that position, so we are hiring a full-time. Because the three people are not gonna decide whether or not we're hiring, the three people are being asked to interview. This committee met tonight and talked nearly for 3 hours And that's how I'm leaving tonight, going, okay, so the 3 people are the temporary people that are gonna do the interview process. So we're moving forward with an interview process. But we're not gonna fill that part-time slot until 2020.
Or unless we need it.
But you'd have to come to public safety at that point and say, okay, we
Mhm.
talked about this, but I need it. This
Right.
is why. And you'd obviously show the numbers.
Yeah.
I just feel like we've lost a full-timer. We aren't filling those shoes right now, and it's affecting coverage, it's affecting how far behind on reports are.
Right. I've seen it done so many different ways, and, you know, and of course, if you don't know, I work for the highway department, and, anyway, we had department heads leave, and the county had they had 33 department heads. They would not fill that position, because there was a payout of the benefits, just like the officer that left here. And they would, if that, department couldn't, they had to wait in their budget, they wouldn't hire anybody until that was paid off in their budget. And so there were like
So
six.
if they had an $8,000 payout like this, they would wait until that $8,000 of payroll was burned through by the position
Yeah,
not being filled before they filled it, is
They had
what you're saying.
to, highway department, if 3 guys retired, they had to pay all that out that year.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that
we
was
did that with the
taken all out of
library one
budget,
year.
and sometimes it meant cutting a project,
Mhm.
so it was,
But we're
So-
fortunate that we have, in this 2019 budget, we have the funds available to cover this position
agreed.
plus. So it's not, and I agree with you, when I was on the library board, Carolyn Havoc left, and think of the payout that we had to pay for Carolyn, and that, it hurt our budget. And we did not hire a new director until that following year, because we paid out such a big payout at the, and we did hire actually before the end of the year, but it was tight. It was really, really tight. But looking at that number, and if these are the accurate numbers, we're okay for the next 3 months. We're okay. Unless something catastrophic happens and we lose every single officer, and now we have to pay $7,000 to train 6 new officers, which we've already done this year. You know, I think we're okay. So this committee of 3, or I should say ad hoc of 3, is with the intent to hire. It's not to get together to discuss whether or not to hire. That's not that ad hoc committee's job.
Yeah,
That was our
I
job
don't
tonight.
know, as the way the table order, as I understand is set up now, it would be up to David.
Whether or not to
Good.
fill a position?
The way that it's currently,
Yeah, the
way it's currently
set up
written,
now,
it's-
I was looking through that ordinance book, and it really doesn't say whether he has to approve.
Because
Is it in the
if-
personnel manual? Is there something?
See, I was just saying with the police and fire review committee gone, but it, you know, it'd be up to the administrator who has head over all the department heads.
But that would mean that every single department head would have to go, have the administrator approve whether or not we're hiring someone. I did see
It
something.
is under
They do.
N. Be
I,
responsible for the administrative directions and coordination of all professional employees of the village, to include the director of public works, assessor, building inspector, village attorney, chief of police, and librarian.
See, that's
but now under Q, and you had said under Q, act as personnel officer, accepting and coordinating requests and recommendations from department heads and officers on salaries, wages, and working conditions. Maintain all personal records, periodically evaluate job classifications when necessary, formulate new job classifications. So that tells me it's based on recommendation from department heads and officers on salaries, wages, and working conditions, but it doesn't say whether or not to hire. And N is responsible for the administrative directions and coordination of all professional employees of the village.
See,
Not to
that's-
argue
that's-
out here, Dan, but I don't see specific here that he approves whether or not we hire someone. Is there something in the personnel manual I'm missing? Because I remember we talked about this with the personnel manual at one point. But if we leave here tonight, I just have a feeling, no offense, David, if we just hand that back to you, and you've already made your decision, you'd rather not fill this position. Now you've just taken away that power of this committee. No offense. I'm just saying, you know.
I'm gonna redact that, because you haven't listened to what I've said. We have taken an approach of looking at all the information. If you ask me my recommendation right now, I would tell you, fill the full-time position and do not hire any more part-time. And Chris, please put yourself into a car.
Then great. But right
But
now.
again,
it doesn't
I'm
make-
the one getting persecuted here.
No, nobody's
yes,
persecuting. I
yes,
said it is
yes.
not.
And I'm trying to clarify my role, okay? That's what they're trying to do.
See, that's why he's,
But it doesn't give him the hiring authority. It says that he's personnel, that he takes recommendations from department heads and officers on salaries, wages, and working conditions.
But
And
go
that's
back to
where-
N, Julie, okay? If I can control what a department head does and hire and fire a department head, why would I not be able to do their personnel underneath them? Q is underneath the department head. Of course, I'm gonna take a recommendation from a department head. Chris and I have been in conversation about this matter all through. I've listened to everything she said in the matter. What had to happen is we needed to put this information in front of the board, this committee, to make a rationalized decision. They needed to hear all the pros and cons.
So if you're gonna make a
Maybe-
hiring freeze, in essence, that's what you're doing. If you're gonna do a hiring, and not saying that that's what you're gonna come out of this, but if you're gonna do a hiring freeze, that goes for every department.
Absolutely.
So that, it means that if we're not gonna hire a full-time
Well-
officer to fill that, but that means that we're under hiring freeze, but I also don't understand the board's authority either, because this committee is an ad hoc of the board, and the board approved this position. So to do an official hiring freeze, is that something that the administrators can do, or is that something that goes to the board level, and the board then says, we are under a hiring freeze?
I would come to you with a recommendation. At that point, you would say yay or nay to a recommendation. And it's gonna be budget driven. Under the circumstances, we needed to look into the future. Okay, like I said, my number one target that I pull out, and I do for every employee that's in this village, is total compensation. Because it doesn't matter if you're making $28 an hour, because we have employees that take $21,000 a year of benefits. That's where we need to draw the line, okay? We could give every employee in this village a $1,000 a month raise, every full-time employee. And it would still not add up to what we pay in healthcare coverage.
Everybody's in that same boat.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But we also have the ability to say, you know what, we don't need to pay healthcare coverages. Okay, that's where I'm doing this constant juggling match, okay?
Like
So,
hiring a full-timer but not offering them benefits?
you don't have to by law. You don't have to by law. But you will never keep employees by not offering some kind of benefit package. I'm well aware
Churn and
of that.
burn.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's the positives and negatives, but we needed to take a look because essentially what we're getting at is we have employees that are gonna be in 2, 3, or 4 years' time, they're gonna be in 6 figures as a 40-hour-a-week employee. And at that point, every time we add $24,000 to $25,000 of insurance a year, we gotta look at potentially reducing numbers.
But we can't tell employees to get off our insurance.
Absolutely not.
We can't do that.
We can't, they just leave, that's all.
But we
Absolutely
can't
not.
do that. We can't say
No.
to an employee, you're costing the village too much, you need to find other insurance.
You wouldn't do it.
We can't, Julie, that's not the intent here.
No, but I
That
kinda-
doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. But you still gotta do a business side of it, you gotta take a look at it
Mhm.
to make the wise decision, because like Jim said, it is taxpayer dollars that are funding everything in this
So help
village.
me out here. What did we
Julie,
decide when we
this
said the
is what-
3 people? What did we just say when it's Jim, David,
For the
and
hiring, for the
Chief?
hiring
For the
process.
hiring.
When it comes to a
process.
hiring process.
But I would say
But we're not. You just
I
said
think
we're not. I mean,
Thursday,
No.
I think we could ask,
You didn't say that.
no. But I'm just gonna skip back, but my point is, let's have Bob look at our procedures now and say, hey, let's get this done, because I understand it one way, if somebody understands it another way, I can understand what the hiring committee and questions on that without the police and fire review commission, but right now I need to know who says, hey, this position I don't think we need right now, this position we do.
Who has that?
Yeah,
What you're saying,
that's
okay.
what it,
That's what
we
it
need.
is. But this committee itself makes a recommendation to the board. So at this point, what are we telling the board on Thursday? What are we should agree?
First, I think we could ask Mr. Sorensen to review who has the right to not hire open position or to hire an open position.
And that, likely
And-
wouldn't happen before Thursday, but maybe we could ask Bob, you might be surprised,
Yeah.
he might have it.
Well, I think he was here, he's got a long history, when the police and fire review committee broke up, I think he probably thought a little bit further through everything
Absolutely.
else that happened, and I think he'd be able to give us an answer.
Okay,
And
thank you
and
for
I would-
helping explain that.
And I think, you know, you should broach him that's gonna come up, Thursday.
Absolutely.
So then,
Julie,
question is.
like I said, Julie, if
anybody-
I had to make a recommendation, I would recommend, and I'm just gonna say this, I'm gonna recommend that they hire it, because like I said, if Andrew had not left, there'd be no issue here.
Yeah,
So I'm gonna recommend the full-time hire. But, and Chris, again, this came up in your review, and it's come up in the past, and it's come up in your contract. The village board and other members of the village community and the board members have asked for you to be in the car more. I think for temporary, if we could look at potentially putting yourself in that service role to the end of the year and filling in. And I think if you do proper scheduling, you could put yourself on a schedule and leave enough time, adequate enough time for your admin side of it. I mean, if you do 8 hours a week, it's 20% of your shift. That
That's what I'm
suffices.
doing now.
Absolutely,
I
absolutely.
come in at 6 o'clock in the morning, I work on the road until 10 o'clock.
Yep.
And then at 10 o'clock and from 2 o'clock,
Yep.
I'm in the office trying to get office work done.
Absolutely.
However, it's been not playing that way today.
but if she
This-
gets called for
this week.
backup, does she count that towards that time?
Well,
Or you were
we're
saying
not-
you wanna work into the schedule?
We need it to be road. We need it to be road, okay? Because like I said in my report, what I put on the last one, if you schedule yourself,
And that's one of the other reasons we need to come up with some sort of a chain of accountability to decide
Yep.
where that's going to
I
be.
mean, I talked to 5 different people, you know, before this meeting got set up. It's like, what is the table of order here?
yeah.
Because I'm used to that. This
Yeah.
guy's got the say, he says no. Now, I'm 3 guys short, and we got snow season coming up. No, the budget's tight.
Yeah.
We're gonna hold off.
If 12 hours
Or
patrol.
I don't think you need them right now.
If you go to 12 hours patrol weekly, it's 30% of our time. It's a $10,500 savings to part-time annually. Okay, that's half of your increase in insurance this year. That's feasible, okay? And what I'm saying is, some weeks are better than others. You know, if you know in summertime, it's completely different, because you redact and you bring back all your officers. You know, where you have more time to do admin stuff, you know?
So it'd be like not to try and hash that all out tonight, but it could be an overall, because
Absolutely.
clearly her summertime is more of a, I mean, it kind of is now, is where you do a little more catch up, because there's not as much, I mean,
Absolutely.
good
Because
Lord,
I'm,
look at the
because I'm
traffic
full
we get on.
staff.
Yeah, and the traffic we get on school days is much different than we have in the middle of summer. I
Yeah,
mean,
absolutely.
I can't pull out of my driveway on a school day, I can't take a left out of my driveway on a school day,
I'm losing my
but in the
battery.
summer, I can take a left if I'm
Losing your
patient.
battery?
Look, and-
Sean, are you there?
Need more people.
So we're making a
I'm
recommendation.
here, but my phone's dying.
Yeah, I'm on the same end here, Sean. Mine's dying too, so do you want to add anything before we lose each other here?
No, I mean, I think that we should, you know, do as you said. I think we should move one of the part-times up to full-time, not fill the part-time through the end of the year, and then reassess. I mean, I think it's good practice, period, to go through not just budgets, you know, at one point in the year. We should be doing a forecast, you know, at least half year, and look at where we're at.
Okay,
So, but I
okay,
definitely think that we need to come up with a new process, because we don't have one.
okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
and that's something I'll work with Bob on. I don't think we can do that by Thursday, guys, honestly. I
You'd be
mean,
surprised. You know, it depending on what he's got going on in his schedule, he might, depends.
But I think even if
Say
we,
never say never.
even if we get it on the board to approve, and then the step comes after that.
Yeah,
Because-
exactly.
I mean, because then it's just a matter of him drawing up a temporary of the 3 of us
Yes.
going from here, and then you can have, what are we gonna do in the future? Because hopefully we don't have to hire another full-timer for like a lot of years.
Well,
Okay.
we have time, because
In other words,
essentially
you
we gotta
guys
go
can't
through,
leave.
we have to go through an interview process anyway. So we don't need to have this hashed out much before the October 3rd meeting.
Right.
Is it an ordinance or policy?
It's a policy.
Okay, because I know ordinance is a second reading, but policy.
So it's a policy change. We can have that hashed out on the October 3rd
Right.
meeting, okay, for a recommendation. We just need to give Chris some direction here, so we can essentially get the interview process started.
Yes.
and give rest assured to the other officers here, you know, that, hey, we're gonna move forward on this.
We're going somewhere.
So, like I said, my recommendation moving forward would be, Chris, help us out, take some patrol, get us through the end of the year, we'll reevaluate it, see how it's going for a month. But in the meantime, we need to hire this person, we need to hire this full-time officer.
And then are we going out for applications or
That's-
just interviewing part-timers?
That's another question that didn't come up tonight, and that was,
Because,
you know, the candidate pool.
do you go out for candidates or do you just go for your part-time?
Most agencies stay within their department
And internal
unless you
postings,
think that you
It's morale.
don't have something. It's a morale thing.
morale, and it's also a savings of 7,100 and blah, blah, blah
Absolutely.
dollars.
And there's no requirement to go outside.
No,
don't
but
have
you
to.
have,
You don't have to.
but then,
But at least we'll have the.
But then-
Correct,
Yeah,
yeah,
we
that's
just
what we
wanna
But
just.
that
make
could,
sure we're
that could be
legal.
something if we, that's something that's in the minutia that if we decide
We
to
could.
recommend to do just the three,
Based on-
person, we could discuss that in a short period of time and have less noise.
Absolutely. But you, I mean, you could interview all three of them and decide.
Which is what should be done.
Right.
Shauna, any comments, because I'm gonna lose you here.
I know I need to use
No, I'm
this.
with you, I think we're all on the same page.
Okay,
Okay, so.
Good night.
Julie, are
Thank
we
you.
good?
Nice.
Night.
I'm good.
So-
It's, you know, as long as I feel like we're saying on Thursday, if anyone has any questions, obviously they can watch this meeting if they don't, if they can't get to sleep at night. But, I
Like
mean,
3 hours of this.
but clearly, I feel okay with this as long as I feel like we're not just, we're not just treading water here. We're actually doing
I think that's what we're
something.
moving forward
Yeah.
And that's
towards.
I
what
feel
we
like we've-
suggested.
But in the same regard, I think we're absolutely moving towards setting up a process
A
for the
better way to
future.
do it.
Yeah.
in the
Yes.
future.
The process has to be set up, and then at some time, I think the police and fire review committee.
Be
should
reinstated.
Should be revisited,
Yeah,
and.
I don't, yeah. That was, it was dissolved for several reasons, but there was a reason why there was a disciplinary part of it and not the hiring part of it.
yeah, and maybe it could be,
Yes, yes,
maybe it
see,
could be
I don't
reestablished
have-
with a limited,
I don't have that background.
limited
And-
authority
and I-
instead.
We
I-
need
I
to-
don't want-
we
I
need
don't
to-
think that-
The three that I've worked with have not been good,
It's,
just throwing it
Okay.
out there. You're dealing with
Yeah.
All right,
teenagers.
so if there isn't anything else, any other miscellaneous topics for future
the
discussion?
meeting dates, I can.
Yeah, we were gonna address the
Yeah.
judge term,
Yes,
so we'll have to, that's something that came up, the term of the judge, so we'll have to put that on a future meeting date.
yes,
And then outside events, we need to look at our noise ordinance. Okay, I took some more complaints again this week,
Chickens.
chicken?
and
We
potentially
talked
chickens.
And then the other thing I thought of too, and just because, our emergency siren is public safety.
Correct.
So, and then, there's something wrong with it. It doesn't sound the
got-
same since we had that.
We got the report today. Okay, so what happens is there's a malfunctioning battery port in the pole again. They just replaced it, it's bad again. It's at the point right now where we know we're gonna have to take over services of that. With what we're doing currently with radios and essentially the way municipals are going forward with it is they're saving it for the older community.
And for the children who don't have cell phones, I was in a situation, and not to go into discussion, but there was a young person who was home alone when we had our last tornado warning, when a tornado hit east and west of here. Didn't have cell phone, didn't have a weather radio, didn't know except for he heard the whistle and knew to get in the basement.
But what they're also doing is they are canvassing municipal, so when you updating that siren.
Yeah,
And
I
that's-
know.
That's
It's-
something that,
But we should probably, at some point, put it on a public safety agenda. And
Yeah,
not this
yeah,
month,
yeah.
not next month, but at some point, I
Yep.
think we should be talking about it.
we're unfortunately waiting on the county to make up their mind on what the hell they're gonna do.
Would it be helpful for one of us or several of us to show up at a county board meeting and to voice our opinion about how we feel about it?
I think you could do hours of reading first before you do that. There's plenty on there.
I have done it,
Okay.
yeah.
I think you'd probably go to a committee meeting rather than board meeting.
That's what I'm thinking. If there's like a
Yeah.
committee meeting, I can contact. But I think it wouldn't hurt. Because how many times we have nobody in the audience here and then everyone says, well, I didn't know about it. Well,
Yeah.
show up at a
I'm just looking
meeting.
at future
I think so. So we do have the judicial term. I don't know if you heard
outside siren.
Brian bring that up.
Yes.
Or David, sorry, David bring that up at a future meeting, so something to
Yeah,
research or get an idea or an opinion on.
That would be nice to put out there too.
Well,
Do
yeah.
we want to set up another public safety meeting while we're sitting here? So we have at least it on the calendar. We can always delete it if we don't want it. But since we're all sitting here instead of the emails back and forth, Shauna, I'm not even sure if she's on
She's
there
off.
anymore. She's
Yeah,
off.
might be on that.
But could we set a tentative date up so that we can always take it off? But it's so much easier to put it on and then nothing else gets laid over it. We're sitting here.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that I have access to my schedule.
No?
I don't.
Okay.
I-
Then never
Unfortunately, I
mind.
don't.
I
have
do.
that kind of-
do it for
Our whole family has the exact
Do it
same calendar on
Thursday.
our phones.
If we could
We could
maybe
set
look
it up
at doing that
Thursday.
on Thursday, I can
Yeah.
look at my future schedule.
It'd be nice, because it'd be nice to just get it laid
Yeah.
out so that we're doing exactly what we said we would do,
Yeah.
meeting more frequently. And
Yes.
it's not you, Jim. It is truly, historically, this committee has not met on a regular basis. It's not you.
Julie,
Well, most of them.
none of them have.
I know,
No,
Yeah.
I know.
Public Works, nobody.
Historic preservation. We don't have anything to talk about. Why pull in
I
a
do.
bunch of board members?
I wanna spend that money you got
Okay.
here.
No, that's Historic Society. That's a 501c3, has nothing to do with
Make a
village
donation,
government.
make a donation.
Can I get a
We're having a
motion to
meeting, I don't know
adjourn?
if you saw it.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Adjourn, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all right.
Thank you.